All right. Thank you all for coming to the regular meeting of the Reno City Planning Commission. Today's date is Wednesday, August 7th, and it is 6 p.m. We'll start it off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Rohrmeyer, you're here in person. Let's do it. All right, closing item 1, moving to item 2, roll call. Michelle, please. Or Heather.
Harris Armstrong,
Here.
Manny Becerra,
Here.
Carrie Romeyer, Alex Felto, Sylvia Villanueva.
Here.
JD Draculich.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Excellent. Closing item 2, moving to item 3, public comment. This is for either public comment on any action item or for any general public comment. Michelle, I do have a request to speak form. It says general public comment, or was this for a specific item?
No, it's for general public comment, but let me read this into
Please,
the record,
please.
please.
Thank you.
Okay. Members of the public may call into the meeting to provide public comment by using the Zoom link provided on the agenda, specifically https://links.reno.gov/4 BWJYQ9. It should be noted for those in the audience that comments are to be addressed to the Planning Commission as a whole. Comments heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the Planning Commission agenda. Please note that the Planning Commission may not take action upon any matter not agendized for possible action on today's agenda. When you are called on for public comment, please state your name for the record and begin speaking. The timer will begin when you say your name, and you will be afforded 3 minutes. If you are an attendee in the Zoom meeting and would like to make public comment now, please raise your hand at this time. Lastly, while in this room, please be respectful. Warnings will be issued by the presiding officers if there is disruptive behavior, and you will be asked to leave chambers if the behavior continues. With that, we did receive comments that were general in nature. Those were forwarded to the Planning Commission and have been entered into the record. And then you have a request to speak form. And I don't believe we have anybody on Zoom. Oh, we do have one person on Zoom.
All right, we'll go with the gentleman in the audience today, Jay Howard, wishing to speak in favor. Please come on up, state your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Jay Howard for the record. That's Jayhoward. Evening to the commission, and thanks for taking my comment. My name is Jay Howard, and I'm the program coordinator for Truckee Meadows Trails, which is a planning and support program for trails here in the region. Tonight, I'd like to go on record in support of the Canyons project, which is item 6.5 on your agenda. During planning for the Virginia Range Trail Corridor project, which is one of my projects I'm currently working on, I've met with members of the Dolan family to discuss the planning for a regional trail to come across their property, which I hope will result in a trail corridor from the Hidden Valley Trail System down to Geiger Grade, so across that whole section of the Virginia Range. I appreciate the fact that trails and trailhead amenities are being considered in their plans for their properties, and the TMT program has just completed a regional trails plan for the Truckee Meadows in the Virginia Range of Southeast Reno. Is an important area for trail connectivity and access. Thank you.
Thank you as well. And Michelle, you said we had someone online. I apologize.
Yes, but I have her registered for the Canyons, but let's see if she wants to make her public comment now or then. What's her name? Huh? Yeah, please. Mary, can you hear us? Mary? Is she on mute?
I had to, can you hear me?
Yes, I have you registered for the Canyons, item 6.5. Did you wish to make public comment now, or do you want to wait until that item is up?
If I can make comment now, that would be great, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, you have 3 minutes to do so, so go ahead and state your name for the record and begin speaking.
Hello, my name is Mary Harger for the record, and I live in DeMonte Ridge HOA. I submitted a detailed written public comment on 6.5, the canyons, through the portal, so I'm only going to highlight the key points specifically on traffic. My first concern is the false information included in the traffic study conducted by Headway Transportation. Have these issues been addressed with Headway, and has an updated study been conducted to show the true data? Additionally, no evaluation was conducted in this study on the intersection of Rio Wrangler and Steamboat, which is the intersection that causes a bottleneck on Rio Wrangler during peak hours. As a matter of fact, none of the traffic studies completed on any of the recently approved projects included the Rio Wrangler Steamboat intersection. All of these projects, Life Church School, the Canyons, and Valley View, were not in the original master plan and yet were approved. But this intersection, which is what determines the actual daily and hourly capacity of Rio Wrangler, was designed with the original master plan in mind. It did not accommodate for these additional projects approved outside of the master plan, and as such is now inadequate to handle the extra load. The main concern is the cumulative impact, and we haven't even talked about Sunny Hills, which will add even more loads. This intersection has a four-way stop and is operating at an F level of service currently during peak hours based on a polygon from RTC, which shows the current maximum capacity is 500 to 800 vehicles per hour. Yet the 2024 Argus Trina data shows peak hours right now, there are already 1,000 vehicles per hour. This is well over the current capacity. Yes, this is anecdotal information, but is striking enough to warrant a full traffic study. Even if there is a proposed roundabout installed by RTC, there are concerns it can be designed to a standard that will fully alleviate traffic, as the real estate at the intersection is lacking. I fear even with the roundabout, the road capacity increase during peak hours still will not accommodate the traffic to an acceptable level with these additional projects. It may be necessary to install the roundabout and consider additional measures like adding other connector roads to draw some of the traffic away. Let me be clear, please. I am not asking for a condition that the Canyons pays for a connector road, as this would not be proportional. I am asking the commission to require a full traffic study to include the Rio Wrangler Steamboat intersection before considering approval of the Canyons, even though the project's total passes do not require it. And if it determines that just adding a roundabout isn't enough at the intersection, the commission holds off on approving this project until proper solutions like adding a separate connector road can be investigated and approved by RTC. I truly don't know the answers, but I urge the commission to be thoughtful and proactive in your decision-making to ensure the roadway infrastructure is in place or at least approved before adding more loads to this already failing intersection. And I thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you as well.
Thank you, Mary.
Any Zoom voicemail? Just double check.
Not on this item.
Okay, great. Anybody in the chambers wish to speak on general public comment? Seeing none, we will close item 3, public comment, and move on to item number 4, approval of minutes. Item 4.1, Reno City Planning Commission regular meeting of June 20th.
Motion to approve?
All right, we have a motion. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Who made
Great.
the second? I'm sorry, who made the second?
Minutes from that meeting has passed, or the motion has passed. Moving on to item 4.2, Reno City Planning Commission regular meeting of July 17th.
Commissioner Villanueva, motion to approve.
We have a motion.
Second. Commissioner
Motion and a
Vermer.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Motion passes. Closing item 4. Moving to item number 5, election of officers. So me as the chairman have reached my year term, and now we can have a conversation about nominations for the next chair and vice chair. So you can feel free to express your choice, and we can have a discussion and a vote on each one. I would like to nominate our lovely vice chair, who's been doing a good job in my stead when I'm not here. So I'll be nominating Commissioner Armstrong.
I'll second. Commissioner Veltel,
Okay.
second.
Got a motion and a second to make Commissioner Armstrong the chairman. Any discussion?
Question.
Please.
When does this take effect? Like, what's the time period? And
It goes into effect now.
okay, fantastic. No, Harris has been doing a fantastic job.
We've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is the votes were unanimous. Congratulations, Chairman Armstrong. And I guess I'll finish for you. We do need to nominate a vice chair, correct? Okay, so we are now looking for the prince or princess. I'm so sorry. Jeez.
If Commissioner Rohrmeyer's would indulge me, I would nominate her as vice chair.
I too would be okay with that. All right, we have a motion to nominate Commissioner Rohrmeyer as vice chair. Need a second?
Commissioner Vogel, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, motion passes. Congratulations. All right.
Can we take a short break so we can play musical chairs?
Oh, do you want to do it? Let's do it. Okay.
Or do you want to just stay there for now?
It's up to you. Do you prefer it?
It's up to you. You guys decide.
Hold it down.
Okay,
Thank you, Chairman.
so we're good?
Yeah. Do you feel like you need to change the name tags or? Okay.
I know who you are.
Chairman Armstrong, take it away. We're just close item 5.
Thank you. We'll close item 5 and move on to item 6, public hearings. Sorry, before public hearings, do we want to deal with the postponement?
Yes, just if I can jump in, item
you.
6.1, the applicant has requested a postponement. That postponement was submitted prior to the public notice for this project, so there's no need to open the public hearing on that item. And then it's also my understanding that the commission may wish to make some changes to the agenda, and I will let you take that.
Thank you. Yes, that is accurate. We had a request to move item 6.5, Canyons PUD amendment, to what would be the second item on the agenda, so following the Talus Valley Planning Area tentative map extension. I don't have any issues with that. Is the commission in favor of changing the order?
I met with the applicant, heard the same request, and I'm fine with this at that point. And we can go to 6.2, and then 6.5 is good with me.
Très bien.
Do we need a motion and vote to solidify that?
No, you do not.
Okay, so any opposed to changing the order? Okay, seeing none, we'll change the order as discussed. So moving on to item 6, we'll now open public hearing on item 6.2. Any person who has chosen to provide his or her public comment when a public hearing is heard will need to so indicate on the request to speak form provided to the secretary. Alternatively, you may provide your comment when item 3, public comment, is heard at the beginning of this meeting. I do not have any requests to speak forms. Is anyone in the chambers wishing to speak, or anyone on Zoom?
Take that after. Just staff presentation first.
Go, sorry, I got the order a little mixed up. We'll start with the staff presentation. Thank you.
All right, staff presentation, and congratulations, Commissioner Armstrong and Commissioner Rohrmeyer. And congratulations, Commissioner Draculich, for no longer being the chair. I'm sure you're happy. All right, so Jeff Foster, Associate Planner for the record. Tonight I'm bringing you a tentative map extension for Talus Valley Planning Area 23. Daniel Martoma is the planner on this case, but in his absence, I am presenting the request. So this is an approved tentative map from November of 2020. That was for 160 single-family detached dwelling units. As you know, applicable state law allows, Nevada revised statutes stipulates that a final map be presented on or before the 4th anniversary of the date on which the tentative map was approved. That date was November 4th of 2020, so therefore 4 years expires November 4th of this year. However, NRS empowers the Planning Commission to grant an extension of not more than 2 years for the presentation of any final map. After the 2-year period for presenting a successive final map has expired, and that is the request before you tonight, this 2-year time extension. Here is, do we have, there we go. Here's the recommended motion. And I'm available for questions. And I would also note that Andy Durling from Wood Rogers, the applicant's representative, is here to answer any questions that you may have of him as well. He will not be making a presentation.
Thank you very much. So we'll get back to the commissioners for disclosures. Starting with Commissioner Velto.
Commissioner Velto, I spoke with the applicant's representative. I believe I received and reviewed an email or two, and I'm also familiar with the site.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer, no disclosures.
Commissioner Becerra, similar disclosures as Commissioner Velto.
Commissioner Draculich communicated briefly with the applicant and familiar with the site.
Commissioner Villanueva, familiar with the site, no other disclosures.
Commissioner Armstrong, familiar with the site, and I read and received emails, otherwise no disclosures. So now we'll move to public comment. I have no request to speak forms. Michelle, is there anyone wishing to speak on Zoom?
I did not receive any request to speak forms. There's no one on Zoom for this item, and we did not receive any correspondence for this item.
Okay. Anyone in the chambers wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and open it up to the commission for questions of the applicant or staff. Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes, I have questions. Doesn't matter whomever will be able to, doesn't matter whoever's available to answer the questions, works for me. Hi, good evening. When was this presented to, when was the initial project presented to planning?
For the record, Andy Durling with Wood Rogers representing the applicant. This tentative map was improved in November of 2020. So it
Okay.
was submitted, a few months before that.
Did it come in front of us again after?
Yes. No.
No, it has not.
Nope, it hasn't, and it wouldn't otherwise unless we were doing any major changes, which we haven't. So this is just an extension, looking for the 2 extra years. It's a very large project on that side. We are diligently pursuing the permits. There's about a dozen building permits and final maps that are in and processing, including the final map for this. We just don't know if we'll get to the finish line in time. So we want that extra 2 years being proactive with this.
Okay, so approved 2020, so it was before my time. What are the findings for this approval?
It would be.
What would the findings be for something like this, for an
It
extension?
would be the standard tentative map findings that are in NRS.
So to approve the extension.
For the extension.
Specifically, it looks like the request here is for an extension. Is that?
Correct.
Right, just the extension?
That's correct.
So what are the findings for approving an extension?
I would refer to your staff report and probably refer to staff on that.
Jeff Foster, Associate Planner for the record. My understanding is that the only finding is had there been any changes in code that would affect this application, and there have not been. So it stands on at the previous entitlement that was granted.
Okay, so there's really, so we're just looking at, I mean, what do we consider? I mean, just, what's our consideration here?
These extensions have come before this body multiple times in the last several months or the last year. And it's more or less a formality granted by the Planning Commission. I mean, it is something that you get to deliberate on, but the extension is allowed by NRS, and effectively it becomes a kind of a formality for you to vote on.
Okay, thank you.
So nothing has changed in the project.
Thank you.
Commissioner Becerra?
Sure, thank you. I'll just piggyback off that one just for clarification. Is this a one-time deal that they get like a one-time extension just kind of by right, if you will? Okay. I had a question, Jeff, on Rio Wrangler, condition number 5. And there was a comment earlier concerning Rio Wrangler, and maybe it might be solved here. Condition number 5 currently reads something to the effect of the applicant being responsible for building out street improvements for Rio Wrangler. And is that based off of street traffic report, or?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Andy Durling. Remember, I was not the planner on this original project, so I don't effectively have the answer, but
Yeah.
Andy would
Well, let's
like to
tag
speak
team.
on that.
Yeah, whoever knows.
You bet. Thank you, Andy Derling again. Commissioner Becerra. So essentially, that condition speaks to, this was a series of tentative maps that we submitted for villages 23, 24, 25, and 26. So essentially, we refer to as the east side of the Daybreak or Talus Valley master plan community. And essentially what that says is, even though there is a section of Rio Wrangler that is not necessarily within adjacent to this tentative map, we would still need to fully build that out. So this tentative map, because we submitted all of them, they all had the same condition. They had to stand on their own. So if we were to sequence it to build this one, which is the furthest north first, we would have to build all of Rio Wrangler to get to service it. That's essentially what that condition's saying. So that would be the case. I mean, they're going to work through it, sequentially from the south, but it's just a safety valve. Yeah.
Thanks, Andy.
Commissioner Becerra, if I can speak to your question as well as Commissioner Villanueva, this approval, if you choose to approve this extension, it's simply a 2-year extension to record a final map. It will not modify or change any of the existing conditions previously placed on the project.
Great, thank you.
Any further questions from the commission?
Commissioner Draculich, I'm ready to make a motion.
Any discussion or ready to just move into a motion? See no discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
Great, I haven't delivered a motion in a year. In the matter of case number LDC 24-00062, Talus Valley Planning Area 23, tentative map extension. Based on compliance with NRS 278.360, requirements for presentation of final map or series of final maps, extension of time, I move to approve a 2-year time extension on the Talus Valley Planning Area 23 tentative map, subject to original conditions of approval.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer, I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Good luck. All right, we will now close item 6.2, and as discussed, we'll move to item 6.5, case number LDC 24-00050, the Canyons PUD amendment. Take a presentation from staff.
Hey, good evening, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Nathan Gilbert, Principal Planner with the City, presenting a request to amend the Canyons Planned Unit Development Handbook. So the subject site is 161 acres. It's located just east of the Palisades development. And also to the south of that, you may be aware that the council recently adopted the Valley View planned unit development to the south. So this request is to amend the existing Canyons handbook to increase allowable units from 81 units to a possible of 126. It makes changes to allowed uses within the handbook and provides changes to certain development standards. So a little bit of background on the area. In 2016, the westernmost parcels were annexed into the city and assigned standard single family and open space zoning and master plan. In 2020, the easternmost parcels were annexed into the city. In 2021, the Canyons planned unit development for the westernmost parcels was approved for 71 residential units. And most recently, in 2022, the Canyons was expanded to include the easternmost parcels, and it added 10 additional residential units to the handbook. This is a terrain view of the site. You can see it certainly has topography, a major drainage way which would be protected. This picture's a little bit dated because Palisades community is built. The zoning, again, this is an amendment to the existing Canyons PUD. Zoning is PUD with the Palisades development to the west with their standard single-family 3 units per acre zone. Existing master plan on the site is single-family neighborhood and parks, greenways, and open space. The application requests us support a number of master plan policies and specific to the foothill neighborhoods for providing housing incentives, housing options within the development project, and promoting cluster development. So the current land use plan in the handbook features 5 villages with site-specific standards and an open space area. The developable area allowed now is 42 acres. The open space area is 119 acres. So the request would be a slight reconfiguration. The proposal would have 2 land area designations, single family and open space, but that total developable area and open space doesn't change. So on residential density, the proposed amendments would allow for potential for 126 residential units. It's an increase of 45 potential lots. To reach that full unit potential, at least 16 of the units would be an attached product, so that's more housing diversity in type. And the proposed amendments would also allow for accessory dwelling units allowed by right. So these changes, the density bonus and the ADUs, promotes a mix of housing types within the development that's not currently there. Open space and hillside standards, again, that's 119 acres, or about almost 74% of the PUD boundary will be preserved as open space. A minimum of 20% of the home sites will be required to be constructed adhering to hillside development standards, which would be reviewed at that tentative map process and associated entitlements by the Planning Commission. All applications for development that impact the preserved open space area, protected hillsides, or potentially disturb a major drainage way would require a major site plan review. So again, any more detailed development would be brought before the Planning Commission for review. There are 2 accesses into a loop roadway that serve the development. That's an improvement from the initial design, or the current design. Additional units proposed with this development do not trigger a traffic study or additional improvements. They're simply under the threshold for average daily traffic. With that concludes staff's presentation. We can make the findings and recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like we'll get a presentation from the applicant as well. I see you, Brooke.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Congratulations, new chair, vice chair. My name is Brooke Oswald. That's wrong one. But I'll go ahead and give a little update just on our team and how it's kind of come together. So this project has been around. I originally worked on this when I was at staff at the city on some of the original projects, so I'm very familiar with the area and the site. We have the Dolan family has come on as the property owners. We have 6 developments. Jack Dolan, Virginia 40s, represented by Jim Dolan, and then Tom Dolan has purchased another piece of property in this project from someone who is not in the family, and so this is all just a family-based project now, and Tom has kind of taken the lead to help bring this team together and move forward. Venture Engineering, John Munson, have been working with him. John is a local civil engineer here, has worked on numerous projects that have been before both Planning Commission and City Council. He has what makes John unique is he has a lot of hillside experience, specifically hillside experience related to the Virginia Range. So he was the engineer on the recently approved Valley View project. My name is Brooke Oswald. I'm with the EREC Group. I think most of you know me as a city planner. I think like to give just a little bit more background. I am a licensed landscape architect. I worked for private civil engineering firms as a planner, environmental planner, and landscape architect for several years before I went to the public sector. And this has been a really great project to apply those skill sets that I have, and we really took this from the base and brought it up based on that. So I think we put together a great team and are really excited about the project that we're proposing. Oh, that one's not it. So I'll just, we got a little bit of a location, but I'll give you a little bit more. Just, this is Damani Ranch High. Right down the bottom corner there, that's the big D on the hill, just so everyone has an idea of what's there. This here is a project called DP2. This is a approved tentative map for 18 townhomes. So as was mentioned by staff, there is this option to have these alternative units of townhomes. So they're not out of place, and this really is, we're seeing some additional townhome in this area. The Valley View project that was recently adopted. and then the Canyons project itself. That is approximately 160 acres. I think here is a great way to look at some of the topography and stuff that staff also showed. As you can see on the eastern side or the right side, we have rocky and very steep terrain. You can see kind of an existing dirt roadway that runs access for utility corridor and also access to the up above there. Down in the lower left, you're seeing that major drainage way. Now, as we looked at this, we really started from that level of what is there, what is appropriate to build, and how do we mix being conscious of the land and conscious of our housing needs.
First of all, I'd like to make one comment. It stands for Dolan,
Can you come
not
up to the
Damani.
microphone, please, so we can get, yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Mr. Tom Dolan just said the D on the hill is for Dolan, not Damani. So, for the record. As with two access points, the access point off of Mine Shaft is already actually stubbed out and probably in anticipation of the future development there. One of the big things at this first level, there are feral or stray horses up there on the Virginia Range. I think you've seen many of these come before you before. I've been involved in those for 7 years now on different capacities working with them. Worked intimately with both the advocates and the Nevada Department of Agriculture, who has the authority over those horses. We had a unique situation out here is that we were getting a lot of horses into these subdivisions. And one of the management techniques is diversionary feeding. The advocates were having a hard time meeting some of the standards that the NDA wanted. And I was able, with support of the Dolans, to go in and have a meeting with the director of the NDA and was able to get them to modify their standards so that we could get a diversionary feeding area, and we're also doing a fertility area in that area. So we're able to get that, and so we've been working with the advocates on that and have user agreements. The Dolans have user agreements for them to use their land to help these management techniques. But really what the NDA liked is we have this initial space here. We have the roadway going up. The Dolans have improved that dirt roadway now so it's accessible. So next year, this winter and fall, we'll anticipate that the feeding area will be further moved up to the east. And then in the future, as this goes through, the Dolans at their expense to about $70,000 with the helicopter, they own numerous acres to the east, and they went forward and did some reseeding and vegetation up in that area to help restore the range that is in a damaged condition. So as we look over at the zoning and the master plan, as Nate mentioned, there are several master plans that we see this supports: the recreations, the arts, the need for housing, that supplying of infrastructure as projects come online, notable sort of extension with the annexation and moving through that. So in those big policies, and I bring them in at this point because they form that base of how we approach the land and approach the design. Just to give a few photos of the site, this is looking up through the Palisades development. As you can see, that development, it starts to slope up the hill, and we've got sort of a terracing effect as you move up that hill, with the canyons being just behind that top middle house there. This is the middle one in the middle there is looking at up on top of that knoll area and looking off in there. There's a relatively flat area where you're seeing a lot of our development, and that was identified through our slope map. The next one is the horses, those being fed currently down in the corner over there. As you notice, this is a really flat area, and this is will come in as we start to look at how we're going to use that land in the future. And then the last photo is it's panoramic, so it's a little skewed, but it shows just the beautiful views and beautiful Reno and Sierra Nevadas off to the left there. Nate went further back into the annexation history, just go through that original approval back in 2021, 2022. We came in for that, adding the additional lots on the bringing in 80 more acres and adding those additional lots. This request came in back in March, and we attended the NAB back in June and answered questions related to the project and how we were going forward on that. Why the amendment? The old handbook had some format and some language that sometimes was hard to interpret, and as they were consulting with developers and stuff, how it would be determined and what was required, and it wasn't always exactly clear of how that should move forward. We also brought the standards in to be a lot cleaner, so they look like Title 18, and they read a lot more like Title 18 in that way. So they're very clear for a developer, for city staff to interpret, and then also the public to have an understanding of what's anticipated. As I mentioned, we have an owner organization, Tom coming back on and kind of looking at this project and bringing a new life to that. Another one is current market conditions. Back in 2021, we had interest rates were at a very different place than they are now. But we still have very high construction and labor costs. And so we've had to retool this to make it work. With that, we actually were not required, but we did an updated fiscal analysis on this. And with the additional homes and the reconfiguration, we're seeing an additional $1.2 million net coming back into the city over the course of the same period of 20 years. We took more, as I've said, a more holistic approach to this, starting from the land, really letting the land speak of what's appropriate. We looked at that access. We had the ability to kind of improve access and public safety on that. And then, as I'll go through, I believe we've really moved forward to improve the open space and the recreational opportunities. Here I put together a quick brief outline, and I'll try to summarize it up really quick, but sort of what we're proposing, what we currently have, and what standard zoning would do or not do for us in this case. I think the density, we're currently at an SF4 density. We're looking at 110 detached units. And we can go up to the 126. As was mentioned by staff, we have that incentive, which is really unique. That's not something we're seeing within code or anything, and we have those alternative housing. We also are allowing the ADUs. That's allowed in the past PUD, but I think what we've done a little different. There was a donation agreement of $500. We've actually said, because this is not appropriate with no transportation, cost to build, we've said we will donate $1,000 per unit going back to the affordable housing. Our open space, our emphasis has really been on not just the quantity of open space. Everyone always talks about quantity. We really believe it's quality of open space that's important, and being a landscape and environmental designer, that was sort of a fundamental way that I approached this. There was a lot of the open space to the east in the previous. There were 8 10-acre lots on the 80 acres up there. Those have now been moved down into smaller lots and into that area, and that will become common area open space, so will not be held in private hands and will be under the control of the HOA. That was not in the previous PUD, and then we wouldn't know per code where that entire project could be private land, right? Except for the required open space and how that was treated. We do provide some seasonal recreational uses, so we put in a pretty hefty recreational plan, and we have the ability for seasonal recreational rentals and horse stable to provide potential horseback riding. Those do have further review by staff to make sure that we're mitigating all impacts. On the previous one, there was a clubhouse and a few other amenities. With the tentative map, we really didn't see any other alternative uses. And then if we just went to a straight residential, we're going to our home businesses and what's allowed in that way. In the sustainability, we added a sustainability section. We had a little bit more robust in working with staff. We refined it down a little bit. The previous PUD didn't have a section related to that. And although in our code we have a section outlined for that, we do not have anything in our sustainability code now. So we're trying to be progressive on this project. Restoration, as I mentioned, the quality versus quantity. We actually, in our native landscapes, most of them you'd come back and do a general reseeding to make sure you prevented erosion. We're coming back in a lot of those open space areas and actually doing native habitat restoration. So that will be enhanced landscape that will use native plants to provide forage and feed and cover for mammals and other birds, and hopefully encourage those communities back in this area. Was mentioned, we actually 25% of the project will be that adaptable architecture that helps to cut down those gradings. There was no specific number in the previous one. They do have adaptable requirements in code, but they're not as specific of how many will be within the project. We are providing 2 parks. Per the master plan, they generally align with a neighborhood park and a pocket park. We don't have any identified parks in the open space. There are some amenities, but it's not related to a park itself. And then through a standard zoning, it wouldn't be predictable if there was a park or not. That would kind of come through a tentative process and how that was all done. Our amenities, and once again, I appreciate Jay Howard speaking on our behalf. We are providing that trailhead to help support the regional trail. That has off-street parking. There'll be bicycle amenities, bike racks required, bike stations required. We're going to provide water there, so there'll actually be water along that trail system. There is art required in those parks, shade structures, interpretive panels. So we've really tried to build it so that it becomes a great amenity, not just for the community, but for Reno. Our trails, we're in support of that regional trail and have moved that through ours. We've set specific standards on that trail that we're not seeing in some of the previous things. We also are working on the wayfinding. We'll have wayfinding requirements, and so as that trail builds, there'll be clear identification of where you are. Oftentimes, PUDs can be set in time. We have PUDs out there that have no time limit. They are good for as long as it could be. The original PUD is 15 years. There have been new codes come in with PUDs now with our code. We kept the 15 years, and what is required now is we have city check-ins. And so every 5 years, you're checking in to see if the PUD is still appropriate. Are you moving forward? Where are you in the project? And so there's this check-in back with the public and city council to determine that the PUD is the appropriate mechanism. And then our reviews. One of the nice things is this is the current review of the process. We get it out to the public. Everyone gets to see it. It's transparent. This will, after tonight's hearing, will be going to city council. So there is another hearing that we'll be having. This will also require a tentative map and then those associated reviews of those major site plan reviews. So we'd anticipate those would be incorporated together. What we have now, there's no further review. They have a tentative map, no further public review. That would move on to a final map. And then through the last one, you'd have a zoning amendment and tentative maps. Now, I think we really need to talk about that zoning. With hillside development, you could set a zoning anywhere from an SF3 to an MF30, and we have them around town like that, right? And so it is, right now, we're very specific that we can build 110 units. We can't build more detached. We can build those additional as an incentive. With zoning coming in, there is a uncertainty of what the density or how that could be applied there. Going through our development concept again, that simplicity of standards and land uses, down to 5 villages. We had all these product types. It's only 110 homes. And what we found is a consistency through the development and a consistency.
Brooke, your time's up. Sorry, it didn't ding.
I will, if I may ask for just 2 more minutes, I'll zip it up and be done. Is that okay?
I don't have an issue with 2 more minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So as we do, we have the loop road. We protected that drainage way. As you can see, we have one point of crossing. The old one that went right through the drainage way and had a high impact. We've really tried to protect those important things. We have better utilities and services and more efficient use of land. And then our open space, we're bringing in these parks, 2 parks in here, a trailhead being identified. The areas, our regional trail running through are connective down to the existing Palisades and the connectivity inside, and then we anticipate that connectivity to future development. We are providing that additional habitat and that as we move forward, as I discussed. So just that project summary, I kind of went through all those things. I'll leave it at that. We did a traffic access study, not required at this point. It would come in with the tentative map. We did it for the 126 units. That was what was spoken about tonight. It showed that no additional improvements and that capacity was there. And as I mentioned, EK did the financial assessment for us. Thank you, and I appreciate the extra time.
Thanks, Brooke. Appreciate it. Bring it back to the commission for disclosures. Commissioner Villanueva.
Commissioner Villanueva, I think this project was in front of, the original was in front of me. I don't know. I will find out shortly here. And no other disclosures.
Commissioner Draculich met with the applicant and his representatives, read and received emails, and familiar with the site.
Commissioner Becerra, same disclosures as Commissioner Draculich, and I toured the site.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer, same disclosures as Commissioner Draculich.
Commissioner Velto, same disclosures. Commissioner Armstrong, read and received emails. I spoke with the applicant and his representative. I'm familiar with the site. And that is all I have on disclosures. We can bring it to the commissioners for questions.
Wait, can we, wait. I
Oh,
have-
sorry.
So
I
we did
skipped a
receive
step.
correspondence. That was forwarded to the Planning Commission and has been entered into the record. Also, we did not receive any voicemails and no request to speak forms.
Anyone in the chambers wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, now I will bring it back to the commissioners and open it for questions. Commissioner Draculich?
Thank you, Chairman. Question for Brooke. Not sure if you touched on it too much. Did you meet with the NAB? How'd that go? What's the feedback? Read and received some emails, so anyway, feel free to address.
Certainly, we went through the NAB there, we explained, went through a lot of the horses, it came up, water on that, explained that there is no water on the site. There is no natural water source around there. We discussed sort of the ecological, there was concerns. This was early on, and we worked with staff to kind of modify some of those concerns too and tried to address those. Those were due to some of the early grading things that we were requesting and the ability to move forward a little bit quicker, but we worked through staff to get through that, so.
What were your overall feelings from, multiple neighbors? Good, bad, just kind of the things you addressed, and you feel like you've solved some of those problems so far?
Certainly, having been to a number of NABs, relatively good feedback. That Ward 2 always has great feedback. The ones that I could address at that time, I did. Otherwise, there's people who don't want development or change or have, are skeptical of some of the development community coming in, but, trying to handle those respectfully and take their concerns into consideration.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Becerra?
Sure. Yes, for Brooke. You had mentioned in your presentation that there were some sustainability components that were refined down a little bit, but you didn't. I don't think I caught what was it that was refined down, and perhaps why was it refined down?
Sure. So I'm a lead accredited professional also, and so using some of the basic principles of sustainability, especially neighborhood development sustainability and some of those, we were trying to expand that section out a little bit more. Working with staff, there were some concerns of how it would be enforceable or how would they monitor it. And so the decision kind of came to pull those back. A lot of those were construction materials and the contractor, developer, making sure disposal, trying to source materials within a certain location, making sure that protected open space, providing certain densities and that. They're incorporated within the handbook itself, but we kind of just brought those down so they were simple to interpret and for them to administer.
May I translate that?
Yes.
I think I got it. Did you propose something that you're no longer doing because staff said not to do it, or you proposed something and you said it in Jedi speak and now it's in layman terms and it's still there?
No, working with staff, we did remove a lot of that and really brought it down to 4 or 5 core sort of elements. They didn't feel they were enforceable. Our argument back was that we were trying to set a standard, and maybe that wasn't always administered by staff, but there was still a requirement of the handbook and sort of set the precedence of what we wanted as sustainability within our development and project.
May I have a follow-up with staff on that? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead and follow up.
Hey, Nathan. I'm curious. Usually it's hard to get folks to, just give freely or willingly things on sustainability. And it seems like in good faith they were trying to do that. And staff would told them to kind of pull back a little bit. Do you know why?
My recollection on that was I think the key concern was the language and, like Brooke said, enforceability. So we don't typically like standards that aren't standards in a PUD handbook. I mean, that's aspirational. But the way, and again, my recollection of that was there were some feel-good policies that, put your money where your mouth is, make it a standard or not. And so I think the staff person, Carter Williams, was working on this with the applicant and their team into kind of finding some common ground. Like, what can we really do? What can we get in here that's a true standard?
Okay, I'm going to hold on to that for a sec and yield my time to.
Question for Nathan. Thank you. Could that have been accomplished with a development agreement?
It's conceivable.
Something like a community benefits agreement, something that required materials from within a certain radius to minimize trip distance and climate?
There are other tools, and certainly the PUD itself could do that. I mean, things like construction materials can be difficult to enforce. Like at what point does staff, we're looking at a final map, the more technical stuff. So we want to, if we want it to be a definable standard, we need it to be enforceable. But there's certainly nothing precluding them or a future developer of the site from doing that. And I think they did incorporate some real measurable sustainability standards, like with EV charging and things like that. We can look at that. The Planning Commission can look at that when we get a tentative map. We'll have a condition of approval so we don't overlook it, during the further reviews, and make sure that attainable and enforceable standard is implemented.
My question is regarding, is the handbook the right tool for this project? Because in reading it, it felt a lot like Title 18. It read a lot like Title 18. Things like a major site plan review felt like Title 18. Can you explain to me what differentiates this other than having a cover page?
It's a lot of Title 18. There's no doubt about that. But I think the tool that it does provide is some higher level things like the parks and the trail connectivities, things like that. Some sustainability standards that are measurable. You wouldn't get that with standard zoning. So this was the path that they pursued, and we think it's an adequate project.
I'll let any commissioners want to.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Thank you, Chair. This is, I'll ask staff because it says in the staff report that this came before Planning Commission in 2021, but I don't know when, so I wasn't able to find the meeting because I remember this project. I just don't remember how, I think I know how I voted, but I wasn't able to verify how I voted. Do you know?
I don't know offhand. It kind of had that timeline. There's been various amendments to it. So the most recent one, I believe, was 2022.
Okay, but we don't know when in 2021 it was in front of the planning committee. Do you know? Okay. So, okay, well, I'll jump to my next question. Response time, fire response time, it's beyond 6 minutes. And now we're adding more houses. And I think, well, I'll go to the next question. Can you touch on that one first?
Yeah, the master plan does allow that in limited circumstances. The handbook maintains wildland urban interface, more specific standards that the fire department, the fire marshal worked with their team in making sure that they're explicitly put in this PUD. Again, it's a lot of Title 18, but there are pieces where you are getting above and beyond in that regard. They'd be required to have fire sprinklers and the like.
That's normal in the foothills portion of, and this is the master, if we're looking at the master plan, we're considering this portions of the sphere of influence, it would be the foothills, is that right?
This is the city of Reno. This was annexed.
No,
So-
I know that, but it's
Yeah.
with that, when we're looking at the master plan, which I have pulled up right here, and I'm looking at, so this is considered the Foothill neighborhood?
Yes.
Right? That's how it's referenced
Correct,
in the
yeah.
master plan. Is it common to, when the response times are delayed, is that how we respond? We just put in sprinklers?
That would be typical.
That's pretty
Well,
commonplace.
You're also looking at the macro effect, and there's more specific master plan guidance, input from first responders, and the scale and the scope. So
Okay, so can you define, okay, well, let me figure out how I'm going to ask this question. The urban interface, how is that different from a Foothill neighborhood? Are they different in any way, or are they defined differently? Are they just referenced in one way in the master plan and a different way in the development code?
probably the latter. It's the way we break down the city into a structured network of, it's a planning tool.
Okay, so are fires a concern
Fires
What-
are always a concern, yeah.
in the north and especially in the,
Yeah, anywhere you have wildland urban interface, it's an increased risk, and so that's what the standards are for.
okay. I have other questions, but actually I have many other questions, but I'm going to let others speak.
Thank you. We'll come back to you. Any other commissioners have questions at this time? Commissioner Villanueva, would you like to continue?
Okay, great. So with regard to when it was presented and I'm working off memory because I wasn't able to pull the meeting because I can't locate the meeting. But if I can, I guess I'll have the applicant come up.
Brooke Oswald for the record.
Hi, Brooke. Do we have any mapping comparing what was presented initially and what's now being presented with respect to the additional housing?
Nate had, yes, there is one in Nate's that shows the older villages and how that was, and we can look at that new plan. I think some of the major differences are that loop road, and as you spoke to fire, that's one of the things that helps fire is to be able to have two access points where we didn't have that before. As Nate mentions, those standards of the WUI and some of that. So if Michelle will work to pull that up. That was one of the big points for both the utilities and that service of those utilities for the city and for that access. Now that 6 minutes, we are aware of that. At this higher zoning level, it's hard to determine. We may have some homes that are not
I have
6
other
minutes or
questions.
6
Sorry to
minutes.
interrupt,
Yeah.
but I think you're getting,
Sorry.
that question was already addressed.
Okay.
I just don't want to take up too much time, and
Yeah.
I know you
No,
probably
and
want
I
to get home.
apologize for going off on that. Yes.
So do you happen to have like a GIS or anything that we can see maybe what it was before, what was proposed before, and what's being, because I think what I'm trying to get at is I think some of that open space that was, and I'm working off memory, so I could be wrong. I think some of the open space has now been filled with houses, and that was a compromise in the last proposal.
So we are providing the exact same amount of open space. We just prioritized a lot of places. So one of the places we prioritized was the major drainage way, which they had a high impact. We went to one single point. So what we did on the loop road, yes, we're adding additional homes and we are developing down another side. That was originally designed as custom homes over there. They didn't have the utilities, so the sewer all would have had to been pumped back up at an expensive cost. Additionally, you don't quite know how grading is going to go out or those impacts of grading over there. So what we believe with our plan now that we have an exact number of open space. Now, 119 is the minimum. To be honest, I believe that we'll probably be providing more open space than that as we move forward. So, Michelle, if you can throw up Nate's really quick. And you can see the original plan ended at the top of the hill and didn't loop back down. And then our new plan now adds, it uses a space that was custom homes to put in the roadway and build homes down an established roadway so that we can get the infrastructure and the loop road in for access.
Okay, but I think it was proposed the way it was originally proposed because it was, towards the top, closer to the foothills, more open space. Again, I'm remembering.
So where that has changed is on the top of this project site. We're seeing that we have now completed the loop road where we had development over there before, but it was all customs. We've now completed a loop rope on the top, and that's where you're seeing kind of the additional development. But as I said, we took the open space we were impacting there, which isn't as identifiable and prime open space, and we identified those areas of the natural drainage way and some of the other areas there to really make sure we were protecting those areas.
And the hills, and so can we touch on the hillside
Sure.
development? So can you cover that a little bit for me? Are we cutting into, are there cuts and fills? Let me
So
take a look.
What's unique about this project, the previous project had, there are cuts and fills, and we'd anticipate those with the major site plan review that's required, and we'd see those through the tentative map. So those will be reviewed when we have a final grading plan in detail by both staff and the Planning Commission. Additionally, we have put in some hillside things back in where we're requiring a certain amount of adaptable architecture. That cuts down on the amount of cuts and fills. The big thing that really came with this project, on the old project, there were about 200,000 yards of off-haul. That has tremendous impacts, both sustainability, cost-wise, and then those surrounding neighborhoods really suffer. We're really coming in that we're almost balancing the site, and we've got a standard that says we have to be in with 25% balance of that site. And so that is a really huge, from a hillside development, to be able to move that. And that's really being creative on how we've created the loop road, been able to spill dirt, minimize cuts where we can. And so that's how we've been sensitive to the cuts and fills on this site.
Does anyone else have questions? Because then I'm going to keep going. Oh, he does. Okay, I'm going to, no, you do, you don't? Okay, so is this near a mine or was it near a former mine? I just want to, is there any issues with toxicity in the ground or?
Nothing has been explored. This is a little bit unique because they have done a number of test pits. You can actually see some little white dots underneath those. Those are soil test pits. So they've actually done soil samples, and that's a little further along than you'd normally see because they were testing some of the sites and stuff. Nothing dangerous or anything that has been discovered at this point, no. It's not like some of the other areas where we might expect mercury or some of those that you have seen before you in the past.
Okay, I will let someone else speak. Thank you.
Commissioner Becerra,
Sure. Thank you, Chair.
followed by Commissioner Velta.
Great. I think this one's for Nate. Hey, Nate. I'm going to just go back to kind of follow up on my prior question. And I was just curious, how does staff review periodically developer trends, particularly ones where the trend is exceeding Reno code standards, and incorporate them back into code so they become the standards, kind of like this one, right? So you're saying, what we're talking about here is that the standard is here. This project wanted to do some sustainability initiatives that exceeded the standard, and y'all said it's not enforceable, so they kind of brought it back down to code. But I'm curious, how do we raise the bar periodically based on these trends? What's the mechanism or the process, that staff follows? And I'm sure Mike's probably going to want to chime in on this one too.
I want to make sure I understand your question.
Sure.
So, and I don't think I do. Can I ask you to rephrase that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Reno code standard is here, let's say for sustainability, and a project like this one wants to go a little more above and beyond, and y'all are saying that above and beyond is not enforceable because it's not the standard, right? So they have to trim it down, trim it back. But what's staff's mechanism or process for reviewing these trends where builders, developers are going above and beyond and then saying, you know what, we really should be reevaluating our standards and perhaps upping our game a little bit?
Well, I think that's something that the Planning Commission has the ability to discuss. You're making a recommendation to council on what these standards should be. So
okay.
Staff worked with the applicant, going over the details. The devil's in the details
Yeah.
with the PUD,
Yeah.
because they can be really a beast. But I think from what I recall, and looking at some initial drafts, we did have concerns, but I think, and maybe Brooke can probably speak to some of the other sustainability elements. If there's something more, this is a recommendation. You have condition 1. If you choose to approve this, or recommend the council approve this, to make additions. I think it's fair as part of your discussion and deliberation.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Because I do think that Commissioner Rohrmeyer's suggestion of having a developer agreement, is that right?
That would have been an alternate option.
Right, might be a good tool. And man, I'd love to see more of these projects, because it sounds like they went above and beyond so far on certain things. And it would be nice to have like things in the record that we can look back at as a team, y'all, commission and so forth, and say, hey, maybe for future projects, this is where the standard is for certain things. So you answered my question. Thanks.
Commissioner Velto. Sorry, Nate, I think I need you back up for a second. So we're looking at an amendment to PUD handbook, or a PUD amendment. Are we supposed to be looking at the project in its entirety, or just whether the proposed amendments comply with the finding requirements?
You're looking at the proposed amendment. The handbook is already, if nothing further happens, that handbook will still be there.
Great, okay. And as far as, there was an issue raised earlier about fire, and I think my understanding of that is that, one, the handbook says that there'll be some sort of interactive process with the relevant public safety agencies, and they'll come up with some sort of emergency response plan. And is it your impression that that is adequate in order to ensure that there is fire safety?
Yeah, I mean, the applicant and staff have met with the fire marshal, I think more than once during the course of this review. There's many more applications to go, right?
Yeah, okay. As far as the increasing the number of residential units, was there anything that concerns staff with increasing the number? Or would those concerns be better suited when there's a tentative map put before us that we'll look at and kind of evaluate where it's placed and whatnot?
So this sets the baseline, and I think the staff person working on this, his initial concern was the balance between the grading impacts, and that would facilitate that increased density. We're going from three units per acre to 4. Well, what's the impact on the grading? And I think that the revisions that have been made through this iterative process have addressed those concerns.
Great, okay, thank you so much, I appreciate it. I think I'll go ahead and jump in if that's okay. Did you have more questions, or are you still? So I'm saying, oh, sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Rohrmeyer. Oh, sorry, your mic's off.
My apologies. Can you just sort of walk us through the changes in grading? My understanding is that although balancing a site is certainly advantageous economically, perhaps some of the features might be lost in a flattened, filled situation?
So again, I'm pinch hitting tonight, so I'm probably not as versed as I'd like to be for that. I think probably Brooke can talk about some of the compromises that were made through this process.
Brooke Oswald for the record. Thanks for the question, Carrie. I think you'd start all the way back at that required open space and the limitation on the development area, right? Because that's going to limit where those grading, we may have some impacts coming up, but that's really where that development is, where we'd anticipate the most of those grading impacts. Once again, it's that, I think one of the biggest things that facilitated the grading and some of the ability to balance the site was that loop road and being able to come back around that other side using, there's some steeper slopes there, but the engineer was really conscious to try to work through those and put homes, or to use the hillside adaptable standards in there as we come back down that hillside. I think that requirement of having a certain percent of adaptable hillside architecture really helps to potentially mitigate those larger impacts. I think as we're seeing those grading and some of that grading coming back, that restoration work that we're doing, which isn't just a native, we're doing a native reseeding and looking to kind of accentuate that. I think where we would see those grading impacts, we'll see those come to more of a naturalized state. And so those are the things that I think we've incorporated to try to minimize. There are going to be grading impacts. It's a hillside and it's a very challenging site, but we've tried to be conscious of that and tried to reduce it where we can or use techniques to minimize it. We're currently working on the backside, and we're working to identify our land plan. And at this point, we've been doing some conceptual stuff in the background, understanding our grading and our lot layouts. I think I would anticipate on the tail of approval, if we move forward and get this amendment approval, we would anticipate shortly after there, we'd be coming forward and you'd be seeing a tentative map of the project.
I'll save my thoughts for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions at this time? This one's for Nate. And sorry to go back to this. I just thought maybe it's helpful to frame it a different way. I think there's kind of a disconnect potentially on the sustainability aspects. What I'm hearing is that at some point in time, there were probably like lofty or maybe non-committal, like committal from like a contractual or obligatory perspective. Like, hey, we would really like to do this for sustainability or that for sustainability, but there's no teeth. So it'd be great if it happens, but it's not really practical. And if it doesn't happen, then there's like no recourse. So the process reined that in and effectively set up some standards or conditions that would be actionable. So it's not removing or defacing any sustainability. It's just actualizing something we could hold the future developer to while still achieving sustainability goals that are not formally prescribed in the development code. Is that kind of a fair way to think about it?
Yeah, that's accurate. I mean, for example, I believe, I don't remember where the standard landed in the handbook at final, but there's a certain amount of lots that'll have to have be EV charger ready.
Sure.
That started off as more lofty, but we should have that kind of thing. So my understanding is the staff discussion was, what can we really do? What can we? What are you committed to making? Putting in your pro forma that you're actually going to deliver on these things. So that's my understanding of the staff's discussion.
And that could have been achieved through another vehicle or instrument, such as a development agreement, but it doesn't necessarily need to. It's not necessarily better or worse if it came through another vehicle, as long as it's conditioned and committed to. Is that a reasonable way to think about it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I don't have any further questions. Commissioner Becerra?
Sure. I'll piggyback off that one, I guess. I didn't want to, but since mentioned it, I do want some resolution there. Maybe for Brooke on this one. I think the EV charging one kept coming up as an example, but perhaps because it was an actual proposal, right? And y'all want to do it, but it's not the base standard. Is that correct?
No, it is the base standard. So there's a requirement for a certain percentage of the units to be EV ready, which would require, 220 outlet within the garage in anticipation of, electric vehicles. Some of the other ones are just, the amount of units and clustering to make sure we're meeting certain densities. I think Nate is right, and I appreciate Commissioner Armstrong's staff. We did have lofty goals, and maybe it wasn't sort of the appropriate, and maybe there's another mechanism, but I think working with staff, we got them down to some fundamentals that I think are enforceable and that we agree to, and, came to a place, and I think it's a great sort of start to think about this and actually put a section, within a handbook for sustainability, right?
Right. Okay. Well, and maybe I'll save some of this for discussion amongst us afterwards, but I think it's important that when folks go above and beyond, that we have a mechanism to capture that. So we as a team, as staff on our side, can see what the trends are and where we need to adjust our standards. So our standard doesn't stay here over the course of 10 years, which is why, and I applaud you guys, I think you mentioned every 15 years you want to review your PUD language because life happens. Put that aside, my other question was, the parks, are those open to the public?
Yes, all the parks and trails will have public access across them, granted easements across those, and are intended to be used by the public and supported to be used by the public.
Okay, awesome. Really, I think that's it. Great job.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Thank you. Brooke, for you, was the applicant who you're currently representing today the same applicant who applied initially for?
What has changed? Two of them are the same. That's Jack Dolan and Jim Dolan with Associated Properties. What has changed is Tom Dolan has, there was a non-family member that owned one of the 40-acre parcels, and Tom stepped forward and bought that parcel and sort of made it a family gig so they could all work together to do it. So that's what's changed, is there's one property owner has been transferred to Tom Dolan.
So when it was initially proposed, for the most part, the same applicants presented, kind of probably got together, talked, presented the initial application, and then now has come back and is now presenting what I think is significant alterations to what was initially proposed. But for the most part, it was the same applicant, right? Except one slight modification.
Yeah, for the most part, the same applicant. I think there are differences, but there's trade-offs, right? And I think we've tried to balance those trade-offs on this new project and make something that's feasible, buildable, and be respective of the comments that we've had in the past. And I had worked through a lot of that, so I knew what a lot of those were. So being horses, a major drainage way, some of those things.
Okay. The reason I remember this, even though I can't find the meeting, is because I vividly remember the preservation of that open space. And so that's another big concern for me, is that's changing in addition to the addition of new homes. And it...
We still will be preserving the same amount of open space.
I know, but it's a different type of... It's the same, but the quality of it is different.
We believe that the quality is actually better what we're protecting now than it was what we were protecting before.
Thank you. No further questions.
Commissioner Velto.
I'm trying to understand. This might be more of a question. This might be better for discussion, actually.
Okay. Should we move into discussion, or are there further questions?
I had one more, if that's okay.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. I think Brooke, one more time in the hot seat. I wanted to follow up on a tentative map question that Commissioner Rohrmeyer had. She had mentioned something about when we would be able to get a tentative map before us, and you mentioned shortly hereafter if things went A-OK tonight. Would you be able to put a more specific timeline to that? And I'm only asking because we just had the Daybreak Project, formerly known as Daybreak Project, asks for an extension because it's probably costly to build right now. And so I'm just wondering how this project differentiates from that, if everything is pretty costly right now.
Sure. Development is always over a period of time. So to directly answer, so we would, based on your decision tonight and either decision, we'll be moving forward to Planning Commission on August 28th is when we're scheduled. Second reading is normally the 2 weeks after that. So we're looking mid-September. I would probably see late September, early October that you'd be anticipated us submitting a tentative map. Then that's usually a 45 to 60-day review, maybe more if there's more questions, and working with staff on that. But I imagine you potentially could see something towards the end of the year or early next year.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Yep.
Did you have any additional questions? Can we move into discussion? All right. Who would like to start discussion? Commissioner Velta?
Okay. Would you like to begin? Okay. So I hear a lot of concerns about what this project will look like, and I struggle to understand necessarily why there'll be a loss of public space. I get that you can intuit that because there's more units, there'll be less space. But because we don't have a tentative map, I don't know what it will look like. So I'm not sure exactly what the layout will be. So because of that, I don't think I can assume there will be a loss of space because I don't know what it's going to look like. And if we get a tentative map, then we can evaluate that. But I think a lot of the concerns that are being raised are kind of premature. I think we should just look at whether the amendments, we can make the findings based on the amendments, and I think I can make the findings based on what the amendments are. I don't think this is a drastic change other than there being more units. I know we've talked a lot about wanting more density and wanting more units as a policy rationale. I understand we shouldn't be considering that, but just looking at what findings we're supposed to make, I think the amendments have been supported by staff, seem reasonable to me. So I think I can support them, but I'm open to being persuaded, and I want to hear y'all's perspective.
Thank you. Commissioner Rohrmeyer.
Yes. I think I could make the findings if we were here getting a straight zoning request for single family and open space, because we would be compelled to consider the zoning exclusively without a project. By adding the PUD handbook, we are here to evaluate the details of how this differentiates itself from code. I would be curious to see the layout, the exact locations of building footprints, the architecture and its sustainability, all of the features that make it above and beyond, because this is a special place with constraints like cultural resources, water resources, wildlife, both eagles and horses. I think there were a lot of concerns that we received from public comment around transportation, and I appreciated your connection with Rio Wrangler. That was very astute. So by having the handbook versus a development agreement or a straight zoning request, it actually compels us to have more detail in our determination. Now, that said, this is a legacy because this is an amendment to a handbook, and if we do nothing, the existing handbook stays, and you just have to figure out a way to make that sellable, which I guess the export on the current handbook would be preclusive of you making a project. The project is developable, it's a greenfield, there's been a lot of effort put into this. So I'm really hanging on to that legacy of amendment versus new project, but I really feel like a PUD handbook commands more than straight code. And I'm not seeing that here. And that's giving me a lot of heartburn as a planner.
Question of Carrie. So I hear what you're saying. You would want to see more design standards in the handbook. I guess I'm struggling with, because there is the legacy of the handbook, I kind of have a similar concern as you do, that it's almost like we can't say, well, they should have done this then. They didn't. Now we're just looking at changes. So I hear what you're saying, but that's a valid concern.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm convincible to making that out there, but I was looking for more detail, is where I am.
Commissioner Villanueva.
Thanks. So this is a PUD, and so I view PUDs as, they typically are unique. They for whatever reason, they can't use the development code because of unique circumstances. And, but with this project, I see it as that they were just trying to get around the development code to develop where it's in a place where it probably shouldn't have been initially developed. And so, now they're in this predicament where they're asking for this amendment, and then we're looking at the details, and I'm just not seeing what I would like to see to add. I'm generally in favor of more housing, and so long as it's thoughtful. And I just don't think, I think that this is not conducive to the character of the neighborhood, to the master plan. And I think, we can't really look at the development code because it's a PUD, but I have a lot of issues with it, with the changes being requested. Thank you.
Commissioner Velto?
So I hear both of your concerns. I do think I can make the findings because of this fact that this was we already approved the handbook as is. We were at the time accepting the fact that maybe there weren't design standards or other things we wanted to see. So now we're just looking at whether the amendments conform with, we can make the findings under the amendments, and I think I can make the findings under the amendments. I think in hindsight, it might have been better when the first time this came through. We looked at some other things and questioned what was in the handbook, but given where we are now, I don't want to penalize the applicant for not having done that the first time when, in my view, this isn't the appropriate time for us to tell them, well, you should have done it differently based on our perspective. So I just want to keep my decision just focused on what the amendments are, and I think that's why I asked Nate that question earlier, was just to understand what the scope of our decision is. So I feel like we'd kind of be putting the burden too much on the applicant if we were to say, you didn't do it right the first time, we wish there was more in the handbook. Had they come forward and sought amendments that tried to put in place design standards, I think then we might be more inclined to evaluate that, but because they haven't, I think we're confined to just what their requests are. So that's why I can support the project or the application.
Commissioner Becerra?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. I'm curious, maybe a question for Mike, because I do agree with Commissioner Rohrmeyer that it'd be great to have more detail, and especially if it's a PUD and it needs to go above code. Are we able to condition, let's say tonight, say, hey, we're all on board, or some of us are on board, and as long as that when you guys bring a tentative map to us, you can add these additional design details that Commissioner Rohrmeyer's referring to?
You can certainly add conditions and require changes to the handbook. As Nate mentioned in his presentation, condition number 1 says that this will be subject to any additions or alterations made by the Planning Commission and/or City Council. So if there's additional standards that you would like to see in the handbook, you can certainly condition them, what those standards can be. And then that would be included in your recommendation to the City Council.
Great, thank you. Because I am looking at this project, and I think my general lens for any project coming before us is how can we improve it or make it better in collaboration with staff, the community at large, the applicant. Rarely do I ever want to say no if you can't meet the findings, right? So I do want to see how we can support Commissioner Rohrmeyer's perspective, because I also agree with it as well. And I think it aligns with what I was referring to earlier, is if someone's going above and beyond, how do we capture that and make that the bar of excellence at some point? And I also agree with Commissioner Velto that we don't want to put undue burden as well. Now, how can we essentially move things forward, but still not have it move forward where we can't still work together and see those details that maybe we should be seeing?
Chair.
Yeah, Commissioner Villanueva, please.
So the project, I mean, they're able to develop as the project was originally developed, or excuse me, presented. It's not like they can't develop their project. It's just without the additional housing and some of the modifications. So they're going to continue to develop whether or not we approve the amendment today. That's my understanding. It's just they're subject to what was originally presented when it was approved, when the PUD was approved at the beginning.
Green is on. My understanding is that the original handbook it's just not fiscally available. Like, you cannot develop it at the current state.
Can somebody explain that to me? I don't.
Yeah, it doesn't. The grading and the number of units doesn't equate to a sellable project.
Yeah, when we broke this down, we really looked at what would make the project pencil. As I mentioned, markets have really changed. Interest rates, labor, the pandemic had incredible impacts on both labor and supply chains and costs. What we found is being able to balance the site respectively, balance it and grade it, and those additional units create an opportunity that we could make this developable again. So yeah, there are a lot of challenges with the current plan on just the amount of units, the ability to, either move that into a home builder's hands or something like that. There's just too many challenges with the existing handbook.
So what's essentially is being asked of us is we were asked to basically make compromises despite the code, just because the numbers don't pencil out. I don't know. Okay, thank you. That's helpful though. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Velto.
So, I hate to open this door, but I'm curious what type of design standards you think we would be able to impose as a condition that, let me rephrase that. I don't think we know enough about the project or what they're trying to do in order for us to say, here are design standards we think that you should abide by, and it's weird for us at the planning commission meeting to tell the applicant, these are all the things we want you to do for your project, before they've necessarily before they've started down that road. So it's possible they have an idea, they have what they're gonna do, but I struggle with that.
I have an idea for you.
Okay.
I'd like to see, personally, I think it would behoove somebody with a difficult site like this, a good site, but a difficult site because of topography and geography and geology, a constraints map that goes beyond a slope map. Slope map is one thing. It shows you the 3-to-1 slope, shows you the 30% and above and the buildable, non-buildable, and the mitigation areas that you need for open space. Map the archaeological constraints, map the wildlife constraints, map the regional trail, show all of these things, and then come with the tentative map with the actual buildable area. I feel like that additional type of mapping is really what's required for these sorts of peripheral hillside developments. And it was disappointing to not see that in the PUD.
Would that be something you would want to condition, that when they come with a tentative map, they also come with that?
Absolutely. And I think that you're going to do all those feasibility analyses anyway, so it isn't really an onerous ask.
Could we have some feedback?
Can you come up to the microphone, Brooke?
Brooke Oswald, for the record, yeah, per your question, yes, we have done that analysis based on soil, geographical constraints, wildlife constraints, or the lack of wildlife. We are actually trying to encourage wildlife because the land's been diminished. So that's how we based our initial sort of land plan based on that open space area and the developable area. So we have done that. It was not included in the handbook, but that if that's something you would like to see, we could put a little bit more analysis in the front end of the handbook.
I do believe it would give a lot of comfort in knowing that this project will not have impacts.
Commissioner Becerra.
Sorry. I just wanted clarity. So you would want to do a condition that they bring that with the tentative map proposal? Okay.
Great. Gosh, I lost it there. Just wanted to say that I'm all for a motion with an amendment. I'd have to follow Commissioner Rohrmeyer's lead, though, on the specific enumerated details. But I also believe that this is kind of step one. This doesn't necessarily finalize things in a certain way. That just kind of gives folks a green light to move forward to the tentative map stage. And then at that point, if they can't meet the standards as well, there's a stopgap measure in place for us to kind of course correct with folks. So I do feel good about personally moving forward. I can make the findings, particularly with the forthcoming amendment or condition. And I do want to applaud the applicants for working closely with staff and just kind of raising the bar a bit. I think that's the kind of stuff that I would love to see more of from more applicants at this scale. So kudos to y'all.
Do we have any additional comments?
I would hope Commissioner Rohrmeyer is ready to make a motion.
Could somebody put the motion on the board? And also,
While we're waiting for that, I would like to make a comment. I largely see the world similarly to Commissioner Velto, so I don't want to be redundant, but I'm very much in favor of keeping the scope to the amendment and the findings, comfortable making those findings. I think Commissioner Rohrmeyer's proposed condition makes sense for this and would go along. Seems like not a ton of effort on the applicant side, but would go a long way kind of on the public body and city staff side. So I would support that amendment as well.
Chair, I have a question. I'm still trying to see, how does that change? How does that being presented, I mean, if we approve it and then it goes to council and council approves it, with the tentative map, I mean, how does that change? At that point, it's done. I mean, we're just looking at design and we're looking at location and placement. And a lot of that stuff, just in my experience, tends to kind of go through with no problem generally anyway. So what do we really get out of that? If you can.
My opinion is that those of us that don't have an issue with the amendment and think the project makes sense going forward, it gives us the added level of detail that I think Commissioner Rohrmeyer specifically pointed out was lacking. And at the time a tentative map comes back, we would have basically a better gradient of, okay, here's what's in the tentative map, but also here's this like extended map of all the constraints that we care about. So I think it is additive in terms of giving us a better handle on what to expect when we get a tentative map.
But
Some more detail.
How does that change the constraints that exist, like the grading, like the cuts and fills, like the location, then we have more detail, but how does it change the reality of where these houses are going to be built? I mean, that's the root of the problem.
I think, and Commissioner Rohrmeyer, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think her point was that we don't actually have as good of a handle on the constraints as we could. So we would like a better handle on the constraints, and we would like that to be a part of the tentative map process so that we have more complete information when we get the tentative map and can have a more informed decision. Is that a fair way to characterize it? You can jump in on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to see where a proposed building footprint overlays with a known horse trail, or where it overlays with some potential archaeological history. So I feel like the constraints map will reveal itself during the tentative map to make sure that we're understanding the full extent of the impacts. I mean, at this stage, we're really considering an upzone. In essence, we're considering a removal of villages and more density of housing, single family, potentially some single family attached housing, and that's about it. But because they added the handbook, but failed, in my opinion, to include the sort of detail that a handbook should entail, it maybe punts it to the tentative map stage, but then the onus is on them to give us a visual product that really explains the site.
And I appreciate that, because that's a great suggestion, and I think that's really helpful, great idea. But I think once we give the okay, it's hard to, you can't go back. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. I mean, you can't say no at that point.
You could deny a tentative map.
Yeah, but I've seen the district court cases that come down when I know what that looks like. So in any case, okay, thank you for all of that information.
I'll entertain a motion.
I had one more suggestion. This is a light policy suggestion, not a condition. As the single most distributor of electric vehicles in this city and in our region, maybe that 60% threshold could be even a bit higher in terms of number of units with EV chargers.
I second that.
Just my 2 cents. But in the case of LDC 0050, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to recommend that council approve the handbook amendment to the Canyons Planned Unit Develop, subject to condition 1 and the addition of a constraints map submitted at the time of tentative map.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Motion passes. Good luck with your project. And that will close item 6.5. If the commission will indulge me, I would suggest a 5-minute break before moving on to the next item. Everyone's okay with that? Okay, we'll adjourn for 5 minutes.
There was an extra Kit Kat in there? Oh.
That's how I took the last Reese's.
Oh, snap.
Okay, we will bring it back to the Planning Commission. Sorry, we went a little over 5 minutes, so appreciate the patience. But we will start back up again with item 6.3, case number LDC 24-00059, Furukawa Rock Drill. Sorry, it's a little tricky to say.
Jeff Foster, Associate Planner for the record, bringing you tonight LDC 2459, Furukawa Rock Drill. The project site is a 1 acre parcel on the the south side of Security Circle, about 250 feet east of the intersection with North Virginia Street, as you can see on the slide here. And that's west of Highway 395. The parcel is currently developed with a 9,000 square foot warehouse building, parking lot, landscaping, and an outdoor storage area to the east. And the request that is before you tonight is a conditional use permit that would allow heavy equipment and machinery rental, sales, and service in the mixed-use suburban zone. I should note that this is an existing use, and so we are retroactively permitting it or requesting the permit, conditional use permit. So zooming in a little bit closer, the surrounding land uses, you have industrial and boat and RV storage across Security Circle. To the north, you have industrial to the east and to the west, and to the and trucking to the south. And the closest residential use is about 325 feet to the west, as you can see on the screen. The key issues that staff analyzed in the staff report are compatibility with surrounding uses as well as operational impacts, and that ties back into the relatively close location of residential. The zoning is mixed-use suburban, as I mentioned earlier, which is intended to accommodate a mix of low-intensity, auto-oriented uses while supporting the gradual transition of the city's suburban corridors to a mix of higher-density residential, retail, commercial, and other employment and service-oriented uses. The master plan designation is mixed employment, and here are 3 policies that support the request. In terms of the compatibility with surrounding uses, there are several similar uses in the area, and the intervening industrial and commercial uses between the site and those residences to the west that you saw on the few slides earlier, those would help to buffer any impacts on the residential area. They are only proposing standard daytime hours of operation, so you're not looking at anything in evening hours. And the only issue that we had was the visibility of the equipment from the street, as you can see in the photo here, and that's due to the lack of screening. So staff has recommended condition number 5 that would require the fence to be made to screen there's an existing fence to make it such that the equipment is screened, as well as to add trees that would help buffer and screen that. And that would also minimize the visibility of the equipment and ensure compliance with the accessory outdoor storage standards. Given all of those things, the proposed use is generally compatible with the existing land uses in the area. In terms of operational impacts, you have occasional truck traffic, light assembly activity that will go on or does go on inside the building. Note that all prep and assembly work, as I said, is done inside. The bay doors, which face to the south, not to the west, in the direction of the residential, will most likely be open during the summer in order to facilitate a cross breeze to keep the employees cool. However, those bay doors will be closed, and this is per the applicant, during the process of rebuilding the hydraulic breakers. Here are the recommended findings. Staff can make all recommended findings, and here's the recommended motion, and I am available for questions. I will note that the applicant is here. Do you have a presentation? Yeah.
I do not, just.
Okay. So, but the applicant is here to answer questions if you have any.
Bringing it back to the, opening up for public comment. Do we have any requests to speak forms? I don't see any over here.
Do you want to do disclosures first?
Oh, sorry. I'll get the hang of this. I don't know why I was better serving as an interim for JD.
We'll
but
set you straight.
Yeah, appreciate it. So anyway, we'll start with Commissioner Velto for disclosures.
Commissioner Velto, no disclosure.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer, no disclosures.
Commissioner Becerra, same disclosures, none.
Commissioner Draculich, no disclosures.
No, Commissioner Villanueva, no disclosures.
Commissioner Armstrong, no disclosures. Now we'll move to public comment. I have no request to speak forms. Is anyone wishing to speak via Zoom?
So I didn't receive any request to speak forms, and nobody registered for Zoom for this item. We did receive correspondence, and that was forwarded to the Planning Commission and has been entered into the record. And no voice.
Is there anyone in chambers wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and bring it back to the commissioners for questions of staff or the applicant. Commissioner Becerra?
Sure. Question for Mr. Jeff. Condition 5 is for screening, is that correct? For adding some kind of screen? Is that a standard that we apply anytime there's like heavy equipment that's visible?
It's not so much the heavy equipment so much as it is outdoor storage. So it happens to be heavy equipment, but outdoor storage requires screening. And so it's really that accessory outdoor storage that we are saying needs to be screened.
Oh, okay, great.
Yep.
Okay, this one reminds me of one we had a few months back off of Gentry in Virginia, doing something similar.
The Snowcat
there it is.
project.
And did we have them do screening as well?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're being consistent.
Yeah, being consistent. Yeah, I mean, that's what we try and screen outdoor storage and HVAC equipment and all those things from the street and from residential uses.
Yeah, awesome. Dig it.
Any other questions from the commission? Do we want to move into discussion? Or I'll entertain a motion.
Commissioner Villanueva, in the matter of case LDC 24-000059, based upon compliance with applicable findings, I move to approve the conditional use permit subject to conditions listed in the staff report.
Commissioner Draculich, I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes unanimously. Good luck with your project. We'll close item 6.3 and move to item 6.4, case number LDC 24-00058, Low Bar Social.
All right. Okay. Jeff Foster, Associate Planner for the record again. So the Low Bar Social case that I am bringing to you now is for a 0.09 acre parcel on the north side of California between Arlington and Flint. It's a couple blocks west of the Nevada Museum of Art, as you can see on the screen there. It's occupied by a single-story building it's developed with a single-story building that is occupied by a sandwich shop and a bar currently. There was an SUP approved by the Board of Adjustment back in 2004, November of 2004, to establish a bar use on the parcel with operations between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. in the previous community commercial zone. In July of 2023, the applicant applied to amend their business license to add a cabaret or live entertainment use, which was not entitled in the approval from 2004. The cabaret request was approved based on compliance with live entertainment use specific standards. And in April and May of this year, code enforcement logged multiple violations of the use-specific standards. The applicant subsequently submitted a conditional use permit application in order to operate indoor live entertainment until 2 a.m., and that is the subject of the request before you tonight. The key issues are I want to start with the surrounding land use. So surrounding land uses. So to the north of the site is a salon. To the east of the site is another salon. There's an office conversion to the west. And there's a bar and multifamily residential directly across from the project site as indicated by the arrow on the screen. Live entertainment is allowed in mixed-use districts as an accessory use. Per the live entertainment standards in code, outdoor live entertainment is limited to 10 p.m. Indoor live entertainment is limited to 11 p.m. And the doors and windows shall be kept closed after 9 p.m. When indoor live entertainment activities are going on. Per code, exceeding any of those standards allows a condition or requires a conditional use permit process to ensure compatibility with the surrounding land uses and zoning districts. And those lead to the issues that staff look at in the staff report, including compatibility with surrounding uses, operational impacts, and public safety. So for the zoning district is mixed-use downtown Riverwalk, which is intended to support the downtown regional center with a particular focus along the Truckee River frontage. Primary uses include a mix of employment uses, retail and cultural facilities, as well as high-density residential. The downtown mixed use is the land use, master plan land use designation, and here are 4 policies that support the request. So looking at the first of the 3 primary issues that staff analyzed is compatibility with surrounding uses. Starting off with what's on the site, again, it's a building with a bar and a sandwich shop. Based on information provided by the applicant, the bar is about 1,900 square feet, which is a 1,200 square foot first floor indoor area and then a 700 square foot rooftop patio. Remember, the request is for indoor live entertainment between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. The outdoor live entertainment is allowed on the rooftop until 10 p.m. and the applicant is not requesting any variation on that. They're only requesting indoor after 11 until 2 a.m. So the bar is an existing use, and the surrounding commercial uses denoted on the screen by the letter C would of course not be impacted by the proposed live entertainment after 11 p.m. There are residential uses, including 75 feet across the street. There's a multifamily development. There are other residential uses denoted by Rs on the screen, sprinkled throughout the area. And then the closest residential zoning is about 265 feet to the south. You also have 3 other, at least on this screen, 3 other parcels zoned residential, but again, they're not next door, so to speak. In terms of bars and live entertainment, these types of uses are expected in the mixed-use downtown zones. Again, I've emphasized the indoor request as opposed to outdoors after 10. And one of the comment letters that was included in the staff report and that you all saw was from a neighbor across the street in that multifamily across California. And that particular neighbor indicated that she felt that indoor live entertainment after 11 p.m. with the doors and windows closed would be reasonable. So given all of the above, the proposed use is generally compatible with the existing land uses in the area. In terms of operational impacts, planning worked with code enforcement, business licensing, and the city manager's office to create a unified set of conditions of approval for cases involving live entertainment, and those conditions were released in June of this year. I believe this is the first application that has come to you since those conditions have been formalized. Typical operational impacts associated with bars with live entertainment include nuisance and behavioral issues, cleanliness and orderliness issues, as well as security, and those are addressed by conditions 5 through 8 in the staff report. The stage where the indoor live entertainment occurs is located in the front southeast corner of the building, and that's directly behind the window in the picture on the screen. The other major issue, operational issue, that of course comes from live entertainment is noise, right? Again, outdoor live entertainment will cease by 10 p.m. and the doors and windows will be closed after 9 p.m. when live entertainment is occurring, again, per code. However, note that, again, given the stage at the front of the building and the front entry there, which is the primary entrance and exit to the establishment, it will be closed after 9 p.m., but it will be except during patron ingress and egress. And because you can see that right across from that door is open block construction, Staff included a recommendation for condition number 9, which requires noise mitigating materials to be installed on the inside of the building at the front, as well as on the inside of that concrete block wall to help reduce the amount of sound that would be coming out when the door is open during, when patrons are exiting and entering. There's also a standard condition that came from what I mentioned earlier in terms of the unified set of conditions, and that's condition number 10 in the staff report, which establishes that the administrator can require additional noise mitigation for ongoing noise issues. So if additional noise mitigation is not successful in addressing noise compliance issues moving forward, that shall be considered cause for revocation of the conditional use permit. I do want to note that the applicant has indicated that they do not agree with this standard condition, but staff does recommend it as a hedge against the potential for future noise issues to occur. Last but not least is public safety. Reno Police Department completed a crime prevention through environmental design, or CPTED, report for this project. In that report, they indicated that implementing a comprehensive CPTED strategy will help ensure a safe and secure environment during extended live entertainment hours after or until 2 a.m., and that's consistent with other bars in the downtown corridor. They also indicated that by focusing on natural surveillance and territorial reinforcement, LOBAR can contribute positively to the community while minimizing the risk of crime. And note that the security plan that is required by condition number 8 will in part be reviewed by code enforcement and RPD prior to the approval of that plan. Here are the recommended findings. Staff can make all recommended findings, and here's the recommended motion, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Looks like we'll get a presentation from the applicant as well. Nice to see you again, bro.
Ken, if you'd like. Mine is brief. I know Jeff did an excellent job, and I want to thank Brooke Oswald. For the record, I want to thank Jeff Foster for working on this with us and working through this with us. He was fantastic in his communication and finding solutions on this. Brooke Oswald with the EREC Group. Just to go over that context and location, Jeff did a really good job of that, but California Street, we're looking at Arlington coming up through there, and then the project site there. It is, as you can see, we have a number of buildings in that general area. I think some of the notable are Brewer's Cabinet, which has an outdoor patio area. We are seeing a bar across and next to the residential, as Jeff mentioned, they also have an outdoor area. And then looking at that arts and entertainment areas, we have the museum. Additionally, along California, we're seeing a number of other bars and restaurants, retail, and that are all really a supportive, thriving little commercial area. Down more towards Virginia, we have another music venue that is offering late night music and live entertainment in that, and has a very similar sort of history of providing that music and entitlement history. Our zoning is that River Rock. That River Rock, as Jeff mentioned, is, our downtown and our focus on improving our downtown. These areas are really important as they have life now, and that can spread out and continue to move through our other downtown area. Looking at our project site, there is a project site. There is a building. The building there is split in two. There's two businesses running in that. The low bar runs on the front portion of that with, you can see the small upstairs deck on that. And then there is a portion that goes along the side. There's some seating there that also supplies the access to the secondary access that serves both buildings, but also serves as additional emergency access out through there. And then we anticipate this area in the future, if there is queuing or anything involved in the security plan, that they do have an area that they can move people off of the sidewalk and prevent conflicts there. Just the history, I'll tell you a little bit. Josh Kellen is here tonight. Been working with Josh. Josh came to Reno probably about 7 years ago, opened up a coffee shop with his partner and a bar. He's since developed several bars since then. I think he owns the Low Bar that is here. Blind Dog, The Hideout, and Poor Devil. So over a course of years, he's established, they're all very successful buildings. He's has a long retention of sort of his employee being there. One of the main reasons he, in the service industry, supplies insurance to them. So I'm saying this because of his involvement in our community and seeing that development of business, and especially in those areas, the Wells area, Midtown area, downtown area. He's really invested in those areas that we have a lot of focus on continuing to grow and thrive. He's also a supporter of the live entertainment and arts. We saw a little bit of dive, and we lost a number of venues over the last several years. This traditionally, as many of you know, has been St. James Infirmary, which was known for music and late night music, then became the Matador and has become now Lobar Social. That license never changed. That always kind of go. I think there was the assumption that live entertainment was part and already approved through that grandfathering, and working with staff, we agree that the conditional use permit is the correct way to go. That is, to provide that certainty to both the city and the public and neighboring properties, but also to the property owner, that he knows a set guide of rules that he's expected to follow, and then he can follow those. So we're in agreement with that. We already have submitted a draft security and operations manual. That does incorporate all of the conditions that you saw related to that. We are in agreement with conditions. We do have a little bit of hesitance of giving originally it was administrative control to revoke that, but in working through that, we would, a CUP process, we understand the correct process and due process of coming back before the Planning Commission if there were exceeding problems or something like that. So we're in agreement with that. Just looking at the building itself, you can see the large sidewalk. Josh, during live events, has security guards outside to keep the front. They are pulling drinks from people, telling people to move on, quieting people. That's part of his process. It is a very small stage and a small business with I think the capacity is 127 people at this point. Whoop. Just looking at that master plan, I think another important thing is this is an area that's part of our downtown action plan, and that really is how are we going to revitalize and continue to build our downtown to be really that arts and entertainment place we want to be. It's supportive of the arts and cultures, of that live entertainment, recreation, entertainment, quality of life. We're looking at those mix of uses along there. They all support each other. A lot of the downtown action plan actually says some of the restaurants and the bar establishments help to support that surrounding retail and grow that retail in those areas. And I think we're looking at that inclusive community with the events and activities. Josh is involved not only in events of himself, but helping to support other area music events and other things like that. With that, I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. We will now move to the commissioners for disclosures. Commissioner Velto.
Commissioner Velto, familiar with the site. I've been to shows there before. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's my disclosure.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer, familiar with the site. Haven't been there in its current iteration. I think I gave public comment on the 2004 SUP for St. James.
Nice.
Wow. Commissioner Becerra, overlap in disclosures as Velto and Rohrmeyer, and I spoke with the applicant's representative.
Commissioner Draculich, I have also been a patron of that establishment, and that's it.
Commissioner Villanueva, I have also visited that site, had drinks there, rooftop inside. I also read emails from residents in the area. And that's about it. Thank you.
Commissioner Armstrong, I've patronized the site. I've lived here for many years, so I'm familiar with it. I read and received emails. I spoke with the applicant's representative. No more disclosures. I don't have any requests to speak forms for public comment. Do we have anyone on Zoom?
We don't have anybody on Zoom. We did receive correspondence that was forwarded to the Planning Commission, and it has been entered into the record. We did receive a voicemail that we need to play for you as well.
Go ahead.
This is Paige Hall, LDC 24-00058, Low Bar Social, entertainment from 11 p.m. to a.m. Are you guys nuts? First you want living down there, now you want to have live music till 2 a.m. in the morning? That is ridiculous. It should not be passed.
Okay, that's it for voicemail, and I don't think we received anything else.
Okay, fair enough. Anyone in the chamber is wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it back to the commission for questions. Commissioner Draculich.
Thank you, Chair. Question for Jeff. I believe the bar to the south is Keole. Do they have any similar CUP, or do they do any live entertainment right now?
Good question. I don't know. Brooke, do you know the?
I'm not familiar if they do or not. I know they have an outdoor area, but Josh, I don't know the time.
Can you come up to the microphone, please?
I don't know the time specifically, but I do know that they have live entertainment there, yeah. Consistently too, and it's nothing. It's peaceful, and they're good at what they do.
And do they have it past 11 p.m.? I guess was a
I don't
better
know the
question.
specifics of it. Sorry.
Yeah. Mike, do you happen to know?
I'm not, I don't know the specifics, but if they did, they would be put through the same process.
Okay. I just didn't know if we've awarded them a CUP or whatever, or had.
Not to my knowledge,
Yeah.
but I apologize that I didn't
No, no.
fully investigate that.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, good.
Okay. Thank you. That's
Yeah,
my question.
you bet.
I had a similar question about the Loving Cup, which has also had a music venue for a very long time. Are they allowed to have entertainment till 2 a.m.?
Nate, do you? Yeah, okay. There's a variety, right, of live entertainment cabaret uses that have been looked at over the years in the whole downtown area. And part of what the endeavor was to put together a unified set of conditions was recognizing that things had been done kind of haphazardly, piecemeal over the years in terms of different bars having different allowed hours and different nights of the week and different conditions. And so the whole pursuit was to try and formalize things, at least moving forward. We, of course, can't go back and retroactively change any entitlements along those lines, but at least moving forward, all live entertainment uses will be looked at if they're proposing to exceed the code allowed standards with those unified set of conditions.
May I ask one more question? Would this be the first with this sort of adaptive code enforcement condition, the condition in which you can not only revoke but change as time goes on?
That's my understanding, that this is the first application that has come forward since those unified conditions were proposed in June of this year. So yeah, this is the first one. I believe on Reno Axe, there was a similar condition, Mike?
I do believe, yeah, Reno Axe had a very similar condition to this, as did, I believe, Low Bar Social, or Low Bar, or not Low Bar, I'm sorry, it's been a long day. Dead Ringer
Yeah.
on 4th Street.
Yeah, so
Commissioner Villanueva.
Thank you. What days of the week do they currently have authority? What is it, till 11 right now for live music
so by
inside?
right, they're allowed to have indoor live entertainment until 11 p.m., correct?
And it doesn't matter what day of the week?
Correct, yeah, any day of the week.
Okay, and what is being proposed? Same, till 2, any day of the week as well?
Correct, yeah. Yeah, they did not stipulate a particular date range. And in fact, I know the applicant can speak on this, but there was some indication that part of their business model is not looking at the traditional Thursday, Friday, Saturday night entertainers, but having the ability to accommodate entertainers on some of the other nights of the week, and therefore they wanted to have the ability to have all 7 nights.
So I mean, it's a great bar. I'm in favor of live music. I love live music, but we have to balance that with the type of community we want to build in Midtown and downtown, and we have to strike the right balance. So I'm concerned about having, and I get that it's inside, but we have a development that's brand new, it's a few years old, right across the street. And this was, there was the impression that there was the time that was in place when the bar was there at the time that this place was being built a few years ago. And so I'm not opposed to extending the hours, but I think maybe we can put some restrictions, maybe 2 a.m. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or maybe midnight across the board. I just feel like we're trying to strike the right balance, and to just piecemeal give certain bars certain dates and times, and it's going to become problematic. I can very much see it being a problem as we move forward and continue to do infill and revitalize downtown, Midtown.
May I comment
Sorry,
on that? Okay, yeah.
It was a question, I apologize.
Okay. So in terms of standardizing allowed days and hours across the board, i.e. another condition of approval that would be part of those unified conditions of approval that came out in June of this year, that is certainly a potential possibility. It's clearly up to this body if you guys would like to provide limitations on the hours earlier than 2 a.m. or which days of the week or whatever else. So staff is not recommending that, but it's clearly up to you if you would like to restrict things further. I would invite the applicant to address the kind of the business model approach, as that might help inform your decision.
Yeah, if you have a follow-up, Commissioner.
I was just going to say that.
It seems like a good opportunity for the applicant. Yeah?
Yeah, I was going to take his suggestion. It's your discretion, so.
Yeah, please, go ahead. If you'd like to, the applicant would like to speak to the business model.
Josh might be able to speak about it better. So the 2 a.m. Provides that flexibility. One of the things that Josh is doing is he originally out of San Francisco, and he's being able to connect with these bands who normally wouldn't stop in Reno and are traveling from the Bay to Salt Lake or to Portland, and he's been able to get them. Oftentimes those are during the week. They're often coming in or traveling, so they're getting in later, so they may play a little bit later show. But that's his model, is to be able to capture that and offer that entertainment within our area. And so that's why he's really asked to have that flexibility. Additionally, he's supportive of a lot of local bands and stuff that may be playing on a weekday night if he has the weekends booked. And so he just wants to be able to have the flexibility to book and that flexibility to do that. And so we really felt that 2 a.m. consistently gave him that. We wouldn't anticipate that every night's going to be till 2 a.m., but he does need that flexibility. If a Monday show or Tuesday show, he doesn't know at this point. So that's part of his model, is to bring in traveling bands.
Can I speak to?
Yes, please, Josh.
With respect, it's still going to be a busy bar.
Sorry, can you go ahead?
Yeah. Of course, yeah.
Let me turn my mic on. Please state your name for the record. And then.
Josh, owner of Low Bar. With respect, it's going to be a busy bar regardless of the late night activities that you're conceiving with live music. Only thing that you'll be doing is restricting art, essentially. We're still going to be a bar. It's still going to have people there. So we're just going to be dictating how art is going to be going into the night. We have a jazz night. I'd love to have that jazz night go till 1 o'clock in the morning. Also, with respect, we were under the impression that we had, being at the venue is 15 years old now. We've all grown up around it. We were under the impression that we could go later already. So the violations that he was speaking about earlier, we were confused. We just didn't know. As soon as we found out, we reached out to Code, because Code has made mistakes with my other establishments in the past, and we had a meeting which ultimately led to here. So we want to do everything right. So what I don't want to do is pull the plug on some cat at 1:45 in the morning who's having a nice, jazz session up there, because I know 2 o'clock's around the corner or something like that, or earlier, if that makes sense. We just kind of want to give the freedom a little bit. And at this point, I feel like we were, with that misled ability to have music, we were we're not going to change anything. We haven't done anything that has been too alarming. We've had a year basically under our belt of being a successful bar. There's been no issues. There's been no cops called. The noise complaints that had happened are frankly just from being on California. They're going to happen regardless of that rooftop area. My point is, music isn't the concern here, and I think that's what we're going to be restricting and not allowing. Does that make sense? Am I explaining that well enough? Apologies. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, but it doesn't really, strike the balance that I'm
So
trying to.
What would your ultimate goal be after 1 o'clock?
So it's the days of the week, because I'm trying to be considerate of the neighbors. And we want to have a vibrant downtown where you guys can coexist, because we obviously want bars. We
So
want a successful bar. We want successful
The neighbors aren't
businesses.
complaining right now on Mondays already. And we've been playing music thus far, for the past year. We have a show tonight, in fact. So the neighbors aren't complaining about that. What they're complaining about is the rooftop during the summer on the weekends. It just happens to be busy. I've sat outside myself with bands playing and really tried to see if I could hear them and, put myself in the neighbor's place. And I can hear conversations on the roof more than I can the music that is downstairs with drummers and, everything going at it.
Is it the music that's pushing people to the top, or does it, because I know, I hate to say this, but when I'm there, depending on the music, I'm going to gravitate to the top because it's loud and, I'm trying to have a conversation sometimes.
Do you want me to find another reason for people to come to my bar after you restrict this one? You're just going to give me hurdles. So I think that's an unfair thing to do. Again, you're just restricting art and then finding me in a place where I have to find another reason to drive people to my business. We do everything that we're supposed to do. We don't have music up top, or we keep restrictions. We keep people nice. We're the best entity that's been there, frankly. We really try to be respectful of the neighborhood. So again, I think, and then let's just say you choke me out of there and we don't like it, we sell it. You're gonna find another person here that's probably not gonna be as considerate, or even like the last couple of bars that were very problematic. The only thing that's changed in that neighborhood has been that apartment complex. And I feel bad for them, I do. But they're gonna go away in 2 years. Those people are gonna come and go. We're here, we wanna work with you, we wanna do everything right, but we don't wanna restrict arts in that manner.
Well, we don't want them to go away. We want to
It's a
have.
2-year living experience, you know what I mean? Someone's gonna move in, and they're like, hey, I don't like you, they go away.
So my next question is, why 2 a.m.? Why is
Again,
that?
we haven't gone past 2 a.m. or 2 a.m. during the week at all. I'm afraid of having you guys come in and be like, it's 1:15, and then I get another complaint or a code thing. It's just, yeah, and you guys also got to picture the place. There's not, the DJ nights are vinyl nights, it's not like techno, it's not Dead Ringer. It's not those places that you had mentioned earlier. So the 2 a.m. is just because, first off, it's Reno, and I think we need to have a better nightlife, and Monday night is an industry night where people get off of work from the bars, and that's their night to go out, and why do they have to get restricted to 11 o'clock, while the rest of the world, gets to go out on the weekend? But again, it's really not the noise complaint. So even if we are doing it till 2 or 1 or 12, the idea of them hearing it isn't the problem. You're just concerned about the people showing up, which I don't think we can take into consideration, because any bar should be busy or can be busy, and we shouldn't penalize them for that. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think with the conditions that are coming in from staff, that took into consideration that 2 a.m. And so putting those into place kind of sets it. There are noise standards, and there are those, and they have to meet those. So that doesn't, they'd have to meet those at 1. They have to meet them. And those are required so that you have good neighbors and a good policy. Having worked with Josh and working on the security plan with him, there are a number of measures implemented or will be implemented through that, or that he is already doing, that help to ensure the cohesiveness of that neighborhood, and making sure that they're not, aren't through the live entertainment. And once again, we're looking at that live entertainment portion of this. So.
Did you have a follow-up, Commissioner? Commissioner Draculich, and we'll work our way down.
All right.
Okay.
Commissioner Draculich, Commissioner Villanueva, good call on the days. I guess I didn't connect that immediately. So appreciate you bringing that up. I guess before the owner came up, I'm not trying to be too much into discussion, but I feel like condition 9 and 10 kind of covered what you were going over with, and I get it. There's got to be a balance, and it's hard to tell them just Monday or no Mondays, no Tuesdays. But I guess what's interesting is what you're telling us. It's less about the noise and the music. I've been there. I've stood outside in the front. Security is usually at the door, closing it when people come in or whatever. It's never just held open and loud. But so your points are valid, and I guess I feel like condition 9 and specifically 10 really are the, hey, let's test this out. Owner's aware. of the situation. If we do have neighbors that are unhappy, hopefully we hear from that and we start to work on some level of mitigation. Don't ever take that as we're trying to choke you out and end you, but we do got to play the game a little bit and deal with our owners, our renters across the street in the multifam and that one resident on the other side. So, my opinion, I'm ready to support the project specifically because I like condition 9 and 10. Seem to make me feel like, okay, we're working on this. I want to promote live music. It's a great bar and establishment. Thank you for coming to our community and investing in us and adding in, definitely kudos for giving, your service employees insurance, which is incredible. So anyway, I kind of slid into discussion because I was going to ask something, but it all changed. So I'm good.
Commissioner Velto, looks like you're eager, maybe?
Yeah, I am super supportive of this proposal. I think this location makes a lot of sense to have live music. We should have opportunities for live music every night of the week. I personally don't like condition number 10. I don't like the idea of giving it to an administrator to potentially change what I think is good for the city. I understand it, but I just want to express that I'm a little concerned about that being cause to revoke it when I think this is a downtown area that is going to have a lot of live music or should have a lot of live music. And if you go down to Picnic or you go down to other places in the area, you're going to have live music or loud music. But having been to this location, if you're standing outside, you can't really hear the music. I think it's pretty well insulated, and the way the venue's set up, it makes sense. So yeah, I'm definitely supportive of this proposal.
Did you have a question?
No, it's a question. I just wanted to piggyback off what Commissioner Dracula was saying. I apologize for not asking a question.
Fair enough. So we're slipping a little bit into discussion. So do I have questions, or are we ready to be in discussion? Okay. Commissioner Becerra, you have a question?
No, yes, I do. Yes, I do. I do. Well, just for historical reference, the old Duvernay used to be open 24 hours a day in that same corridor. My question is, well, two parts. One, a suggestion. One for Jeff. Great job. I just think in the future, maybe just having some comparables. I know y'all mentioned, both you and Brooke, that Keel's across the street and some other places are across the street, but they're not really apples to apples if they also don't have a CUP to compare to, right? So maybe just if there are some other comparables like Centro or Reno Public House, or some that have a CUP until 2 a.m., that might kind of help us, right? My actual question to kind of segue is more on the ventilation. So if y'all are required to close windows like at 9 or 10 o'clock, and it's hot August nights, doesn't that get warm? And are we not worried about people passing out?
We just,
No, it's ser- like-
no, it's a good question, because
Yeah.
at 100 degrees in there, it'll be terrible.
Yeah, for
So
real.
we just, what was it? 3rd of July, my HVAC went out, and me and the gentleman who was fixing it sat up there for about 8 hours in the sun fixing it. I still got a nice little glow from it today, just to make sure people could go into 4th of July and that weekend, because once it went out, I was devastated, essentially. So it's nice in there right now. If it goes out, which happens to me, I have an HVAC going out at Blind Dog. Thank gosh I have 2. I already fixed a swamp cooler. But this isn't more or less because I want people to come to my venue and not be miserable. If it's 120 degrees in there, they're out of there, we lose money. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, like Commissioner Draculich mentioned, we don't want to choke you out, and I also agree with Commissioner Villanueva, though. We've got to strike that balance, and we'll find that balance.
I appreciate the subject. It's a very sensitive thing, and you guys have to get that balance. I get it. I just obviously am on the other side of it, where I know we try really hard, and I think we do very good work, and I think our other bars speak highly of that. And I know this is only a year new, but I get that you have to make a call now for future stuff. I just would hope to be on the positive of that as opposed to the negative, if you know what I mean. So, and I think we will. And if I see you guys in there, now I really have to do good work, because I want you guys to come in there and have drinks, and, don't want to disappoint you.
Yeah, well, like I mentioned in the prior item before us, I try to look at it from how can we help the application be better?
Yeah.
Right? So let's see if we can find something there.
Sure.
I'll save my other thoughts for discussion.
Great. Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Rohrmeyer, did you have a question? Okay. Commissioner Villanueva, did you have follow-up questions?
Yeah, I do have
Great.
a question. I just want to understand something a little bit more. You mentioned, staff mentioned where was it? I think it's one of the conditions. You mentioned what was it, like the adjustment? You guys are trying to, I can't talk. You guys are trying to create some more standardization, and you mentioned something about modifying as needed. Can you touch on that a little bit? Modifying what? Modifying the time or modifying the ability for these folks to continue having music until 2 a.m.? What were you referencing? Is it a condition?
I think what I was, as Jeff Foster, Associate Planner, I think what I was referring to was in response to your earlier question. If your request is to have a unified set of operating days and hours for live entertainment uses moving forward, if that was the request, I was saying that perhaps the standard set of conditions that came out in June of this year could be looked at to add more specificity so that future requests were standardized. If that wasn't what you were talking about.
Yeah, I think it was more towards what Commissioner Velto mentioned about the administrator review. How does that?
Okay, so
can you touch
in
on
reflecting on Commissioner Velto's concern on condition number 10 specifically.
Is that the one? Okay.
Yeah, so condition number 10.
Oh, noise mitigation, okay.
Condition number 10 is a kind of a fail-safe stopgap if the applicant or any applicant that this condition is applied to, if there are ongoing noise issues and through cooperative efforts to mitigate those noise issues, if those don't solve the problem. In other words, if you have a bad operator and or there's just physically no way to mitigate the issues, we have to address them. And so a conditional use permit that is granted has the ability to be clawed back. Not just if there's one issue or, kind of a thing, but if there's an ongoing pattern of violations, code enforcement, nuisance type issues, then the administrator has the ability to bring this back, bring the entitlement back and say.
I actually kind of agree with Commissioner Velto. I don't know that that's appropriate. I'd rather it is a due process issue than it's a property right. So I think they would have to go through the whole process and come back and go in front of city council. I don't think it's appropriate for an administrator to make that decision. So I surprisingly agree with Commissioner Velto.
No offense.
So if we're going to do it, we do it. And then if they're violating, then they go through the due process procedures, just like anyone else with a standard property right would go through. So that, that's my position on that. But thank you for clarifying.
Commissioner Becerra, did you have a question?
I do,
Okay.
Chair.
Go for it.
Just one to follow up on that kind of topic. Maybe for the administrator, is that just a broad pronoun for staff? Or would that be you, Mike? I'm not sure.
Oh, I guess in this case, technically, it would be myself or the assistant director or director of development services.
What would be the criteria for future complaints in this kind of situation? Like, the way it's worded, it's pretty broad, right? And that's probably what makes folks uncomfortable, myself included, because I would just be like, oh, well, that's interesting.
Typically, these will come to us through code enforcement if there was a complaint. The intent of that condition is that we could work with the applicant to come up with some supplemental mitigation to address the code enforcement complaints and bring them into compliance. If that condition is removed, which is within your purview to do if you choose, it would go through code enforcement and ultimately lead to either fines or revocation of their conditional use permit through the process that exists in code. So I think the intent of that condition is to allow some ability for the city to work with business owners to bring them into compliance without having to just revoke their conditional use permit. That's the intent. But, if this board feels that that's not an appropriate path forward, it's certainly within your purview to make amendments to that condition or remove that condition.
And just a follow-up question, Mike. I remember a little while ago when the Axe Bar was before us, there was folks asking us about a decibel level, and the response, I think, at the time was that it's downtown, crank it up. Essentially, no decibel level kind of threshold, right? Is that the same thing in this corridor? Is that downtown? Is there no decibel threshold for what constitutes loud or not loud?
I don't think there is a decibel level in the downtown core. No, there's not. I had to kind of rack my brain here on code.
Okay, that's my one concern. It'll kind of segue into, I guess, discussion is just I have a hard time just what's loud to my neighbor to the left may not be loud to me or to the neighbor to the right, and so we need something to gauge that so we can strike a balance in good faith. Not a question for you, but just thinking out loud.
Commissioner Velto?
I do have a question
Great.
this time. My question is to you, Brooke. Do you, I am inclined to not want to approve this without condition 10. Is there any reason why you would want us to keep condition 10? I may be overthinking this, but is there a reason why that may be less likely to result in an appeal, therefore you would like it, or is there any?
I believe the mechanism is already in place through as Mike defined, so we'd prefer to have it off. Obviously, it's the purview of this, but we just believe there's already a mechanism to kind of work through that, and through that code enforcement working to meet the conditions and through that, and that's our opinion on that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Draculich?
Okay, piggyback on that, Mike. So they go through code, they get a complaint, they go through code. What I liked about 10 is grounds for the administrator require additional noise mitigation. So that's what I liked about it. It's like, hey, what you did in condition 9 didn't work out super good. What's going on? Have a communication. Great. Can we try X, Y, and Z? And they're working with staff to be going through that. Is that the same process with code?
To some degree, and I think really to put it in kind of a real world example, if it did come up, and I'm not saying it ever would, but there's not every bar operator we have better actors than others. If it came back to us, and for example, the applicant said, we're not going to do it, we're not going to do any of this, then it would essentially revert back to the standard process.
I just feel like we're talking about the same thing, 10 and working with code. Am I wrong? What is there?
It's I think more of a chance to try to let's work this out before it gets to that next level.
10
Yes.
puts it that way.
Yeah.
And if we don't have 10 and they go through code, it's harsher and quicker? Is that what you're telling me?
It very well could be, yes.
Oh, okay.
I was just going to comment, are we in discussion now?
Sure.
Well, really quick, before we go to discussion.
I have more, yeah.
Okay, let's finish questions and we'll move into discussion. So Commissioner Villanueva, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question for staff. I just need some clarity on some things before I make a decision, because I am concerned about the standardization. I do want to see, this area progress and do well for everyone. So my question is there in this area where this bar is located, is there a noise threshold? And if they go above that, they'd be in violation of code, as is today, even without the changes. I mean, I get the 11 o'clock, but I mean, just in general, is there a noise variable threshold in place?
No. The city code is admittedly lacking, and everyone knows that, admittedly lacking on defined noise standards.
Okay.
So in whether it's geographic areas or whatnot. So I believe that's something that is being looked at kind of in a broader manner. It's obviously not going to be brought to bear tonight, but it is something that is on the radar to be looked at, in a more defined way to reduce this ambiguity that we come across every time something like this comes before you.
So if we grant this now with this, as broad as it is now, and then the city puts something in place, we can't retroactively come back, right?
You mean
And
in terms of,
if
let's
we-
say a 50 decibel limit got put in place.
Right.
It would be allowed to exist as is. It would,
But-
yeah.
But if we restricted this and then the city put something in place, the applicant can always come back and extend and go beyond what they've already been entitled to. They could come back. And so, for example, if we restrict this, we pull back a little bit, we don't give them the request as it's being made, 2 a.m.
Okay.
noise, or excuse me, band inside till 2 a.m. In 7 years, they can come back and ask that that they do get that authority.
Sure, they could always request an amendment to the conditional use
Nothing
permit.
limits them, right? They can come back in the future, whether or not the city decides to address that noise variable
Sure.
issue.
Yes, if situations change and something happens where they want a condition amended, they can always come back and make that request.
Okay, and I'm going to try and make this question clearer than my last questions have been. So there's always an opportunity for them to get more than what they get, say they walk away with today. The applicant can always come back and get more later. But we as a commission can't take away as easily as we can give. I don't know how to rephrase that. Does anyone know what I'm trying to say?
Yes is the answer. Yeah.
Right. So if we grant a broad application, it's harder for us to pull back.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we give a little now, the applicant can always ask for more later.
I see your point, and yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for bearing with me.
I think we're ready to pivot to discussion. Yes. Commissioner Velta, would you like to start discussion?
Yes, I would like this business to succeed. I would like this to be a successful endeavor where we have more music. I would propose us approving it, modifying condition number 10. I like the idea of encouraging cooperation and working with code enforcement, but I don't like the last sentence that says, if any such additional noise mitigation is not successful, this shall be considered cause for revoking the permit. I don't like that sentence, so I'd want to get rid of that sentence and just say that if there are future noise compliance issues, there will be grounds to require additional noise mitigation, which sounds like it is the code requirement. Or maybe there'll be like an interactive process where they talk about noise mitigation, but I don't want this to be a tool that people who don't like this can use to try to shut them down.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer.
Yeah, so the zoning in place is downtown. You're on the north side of California. That is, in essence, the same zoning that we have here, and I'm listening to many cars drive by through multiple walls. So, I mean, the hypocrisy of this is getting a little, I don't know, in my opinion, overboard. I find that condition 10 is not easy to enforce, and I just listened to the Canyons about enforceability and having language that has to be enforceable. So I moved to strike condition 10 altogether, and it's a sink or swim situation. If you're a nuisance, then you're going to get your permit revoked. It's as simple as that. And I don't even know why we're talking about 2 a.m. in a 24-hour town.
I'm persuaded.
Commissioner Draculich, your mic's on. Did you?
Oh, my bad. Yeah, I'm good with Commissioner Rohrmeyer's suggestion. I want to see him succeed, and I think we're kind of, maybe the right word is just digging into the semantics. The way I read it, I feel like it's 6 to 1.5 doesn't do another, and I'm good with 10 being gone, helping this gentleman, continue to contribute. If you get noise complaints and you're not trying to mitigate them and you're showing bad faith, then it's probably not the right bar to own at this point. So as long as you're playing ball, and we have a mechanism for neighbors who are constantly complaining for months over years, and then there's an issue, and we don't need to see that. That goes to staff. So I'm good with that if we want to move forward with striking 10.
Commissioner Becerra, did you have a comment?
I did.
Go for it.
Great, thank you. I'm all on board for those recommendations. I did like 10 on the grounds that it seems to give teeth to maybe Villanueva's sentiment about what we have to take back a little bit if folks got out of hand. But I also want y'all to succeed. I do believe most people want to play ball in good faith. I don't know. I was just kind of thinking with 10, originally I was thinking that it might be good to say, well, we use that for the first month to see, hey, what days of the week might you get some complaints, right? Maybe everyone likes every day but Wednesday or Thursday or whatever, right? And then we actually use data to say, oh, here's a trend. Maybe these days we cut it back a little. The rest of the days they're good to go, right? If there's like an appetite for something like that, great. But even without it, I'm on board with that recommendation from Rohrmeyer and Belto.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Thank you. So I agree with removing number 10, but I think the nuance here, and nuances are important because I think the nuance is important because unlike with Hot August Nights, which is, once a year, this is asking for 7 days a week till 2 a.m. every day, not once a week in August, not, one time in June or one Saturday a month. It's Monday through Sunday till 2 a.m. And so if we're, I want to see this bar succeed. I don't want to see them go under. I love live music. I think they have a lot to offer the community. But we're up here because we do have to have a voice for the residents as well. It's in businesses and everyone equally. So I think we do need to pay attention to the nuances and not just give away, just write a blank check essentially. Anytime someone comes up and is like, well, my business needs this. Great, we all need a little bit of something, but we got to work within, we got to work within the community and our neighbors, and so I think it's important to consider the nuance. In this particular case, I think 2 a.m. is fine. I would restrict it to maybe Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Or if you want Monday through Sunday, maybe restrict it till midnight. I just think it's a little bit too broad. Given that there are currently no standards in place with the city. There's nothing stopping the applicant from coming back in a couple years and asking for more once we have maybe a better understanding of what the noise variable ordinances might be at that point. I'm just trying to find the right balance here, and I think this just goes a little bit too far. For present day, maybe not in 7 years, maybe not in 5 years, maybe it'll be suitable at that point. But I think for right now, it goes a little bit the request is a little bit too far. I think if we can just claw it back a little bit, I'd be happy. So maybe we can do, I'm open to suggestions, but I just think the way it's written now is just a little bit too broad. Thank you.
Commissioner Velto?
I mean, we talk about this being like, oh, they can just come back later on, but that's an expense. Like, this is a business we want to succeed. It's not an easy process to just say, try this out for a few years. By the way, we're handicapping you in your ability to succeed, and then come back to us once you have data and hire someone to represent you, go through this process. Like, this is not something we should do to a small business that we want to succeed. If I thought this were out of line for the area, I think I'd be more inclined to agree with you. But given how I view the area, I think that we should do what we can to let the business succeed. So I guess that's where I'm at here. I don't necessarily think we should give them a trial run and then force them to come back in a few years. It's just costly, and we're putting up blocks to them succeeding as a business.
I was just, that's not the intent, is to cost, to create cost, but a lot of things cost. And sometimes that's the downfall of trying to strike the right balance. Nothing's perfect. And when we're trying to do the right thing, sometimes that does involve cost. And I think the option is more than fair to just say, hey, maybe Thursday, Friday, Saturday till 2 a.m. or maybe till midnight. But we did hear from residents. We did hear from folks who were concerned about the noise. And I'm not saying no, it's a hard no. I think we just need to consider, the circumstances. And I'm looking at, the areas around here, and it's not like it's right in, on Virginia Street. It's on California, which is a mix of businesses. I think it's reasonable to say, let's just pull back a little bit to make, people work Monday through Friday, and there are residents here. So that's my position. I want to say yes. So if you guys just give me a reason to say yes and just work with me, I'd be happy to make sure that this application has a unanimous vote. But just the way it is now, I can't.
Commissioner Becerra?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. I think what's hard for all of us, what's hard for me is that we don't have a standard by which to all go off of here. I think we all talked about this decibel level threshold, and I think if we had that in our toolkit, it would be a lot easier for us to kind of all be speaking the same language and start at the same place. And with that, maybe it's a question to our fellow administrator as far as like Do you know roughly when we might be getting, or when that conversation might be happening with other players and folks?
This is an issue that staff is addressing as we speak. So we're working with the community, with the city manager's office, with business license, with code enforcement, getting everybody's input. That's where these kind of new standard conditions came from. It came out of that process, but admittedly, so that it is definitely a work in progress.
Okay, great. Thank you. And so my next question is, I was going to say Brooke because I'm actually confused because Brooke used to be on this team over here, and I just forget who was presenting what. But I think Jeff mentioned that to Commissioner Villanueva's questioning that if we did have a kind of noise threshold at some point in the future, that we couldn't apply that to this condition, correct? That we could not.
Yeah, it'd be grandfathered.
It couldn't.
Right, it wouldn't.
Unless, so then my question is, couldn't that just be a condition now? Like, hey, in the future, if we have a kind of noise threshold, then y'all just have to play ball, and that's what takes place? Could we not do that?
I think, and I'm going to get the city attorney to confirm this, that you potentially could craft a condition that said any changes to future noise ordinances included in Title 18 shall apply. I don't know if, I'm not sure if that can be applied or not. I defer
Just trying to explore options here that hopefully are amenable
There
to
actually
everyone.
is a noise ordinance under Title 18, 1804.1408, titled Noise. Noise at residential property lines. Measurement of noise shall be made at the residential property line with the sound level meter and octave band analyzer, meeting the standards prescribed by the American Standards Association. So there is, a code on that, and it's 49 decibels, but it goes to the residential property line. So there is, some guidance on that.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. How does that apply to this application before us?
Carl, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that's under residential adjacency. And residential adjacency applies to non-residential development adjacent to residentially zoned properties. And unfortunately, depending on your perspective, the residential use across the street would be considered adjacent, but it's not residentially zoned. There's no residential zoning adjacent to this property.
Okay.
So that standard unfortunately doesn't apply.
Okay, so then the
Yeah,
question.
so we don't have beyond residential adjacency, we don't have a broader noise paradigm.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jeff and Mike.
So may I get clarification on that? That if a future noise ordinance comes for commercial or mixed-use properties, zoned properties, that everything is grandfathered in, then what would be the point of the ordinance? Would that not apply to every universally like?
I think it's a taking.
So what would be the point of it?
I don't do, is that not a taking? I'll defer to legal on this.
If a new noise ordinance were introduced, the city council or were adopted, city council, if they wanted it to apply to existing uses, would have to explicitly make that ordinance retroactive. It has to be explicit in the ordinance itself.
Thank you. Should a noise ordinance come forward in front of this body? Well, that would be a strong recommendation from policy. Thank you.
Yeah, I just to jump in on, I guess, the discussion piece, I think we should be careful about being very normative and prescriptive about what we would like to see or what could be. This is a very kind of specific matter. And so I would just suggest that we stick to the findings that we have to make, not necessarily be prescriptive over and above what we're looking at. I don't think that's particularly helpful or constructive. So that would just be my contribution here.
I'm ready to make a motion, Chair.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
In the matter of case number LDC 24-00058, Based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the conditional use permit, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, except that condition number 10 shall be deleted, and I can make all the findings.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer, second.
We have a motion and a second. Should we do a roll call vote for this one?
Yeah, let's do that.
Thank you.
Hang on just a second. Okay, Draculich,
Yes.
Armstrong,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Romeyer,
Yes.
Velto,
Yes.
Villanueva.
No.
Okay. Motion passes 5-1. And then if you could just read the appeal process into the record for anybody out there that disagrees with your decision.
Can someone, sorry, I don't see it on the agenda.
Can I comment?
Top of page 2.
Page 2 of the agenda, appeal process. Here.
Oh, sorry, it's in the small print. Apologies for that. Okay, the appeal process. Any final action, not including recommendations or failure to take action by the Planning Commission, may be appealed to the Reno City Council by the applicant, the mayor, or a city council member, or any person who is aggrieved by the action or inaction. An appeal, together with fees, must be filed with the city clerk within 10 business days, starting on the day after written notice of the action is filed with the city clerk.
Thank you.
Chair, can I comment since we didn't get to do comments after?
Yeah, if you have a final comment, we can do that, and then we'll close the item.
Just to clarify on the no, I am in favor of expanding, the allowability of the live music. I am just, I can't get behind, a piecemeal way about going about this. There's lots of businesses, and I just feel like it would have made a lot more sense if we can have just streamlined this and have everything consistent rather than having some bars with some authority and other bars with different authority. But, maybe at some point we can get there and we won't have to have this conversation again. But thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. With that, we will close item 6.4 and move to item 6.6. Case number LDC 24-00063, Calvary Chapel zone change. We'll have a presentation from Nate.
Thank you. This one's probably a little less controversial. For the record, Nathan Gilbert, Principal Planner, presenting a zone change request for a Calvary Chapel zone change. The subject site's a 2.16 acre site. The zoning map amendment request from industrial commercial to mixed employment. The current master plan is mixed employment. It's in the industrial logistics employment area. The proposed zone change to mixed employment would bring the site further into conformance with the adopted master plan, which is for that sort of light industrial area. So the zoning is conforming to the mixed employment master plan designation and is adjacent to mixed employment and public facility zoning in the area. It would maintain most indoor and light industrial uses by right. More intense industrial uses would require additional review or are prohibited. All commercial uses are maintained, like the office, retail, and restaurant, and the existing Calvary Chapel Church. Significant expansion of any commercial or industrial use requires a site plan review. You can see development standards are pretty much the same, the main difference being an additional 10-foot height under the mixed employment for development potential. Staff has reviewed the findings, and this brings the site into further conformance with the master plan designation, and we recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. We have a presentation from the applicant.
Good evening once again, Brooke
3 for
Oswald,
3.
Rep Planning. I am representing KLS and John Kapotic, as you know. So this is sort of a short and sweet proposal on the zoning. It is a zoning request looking at moving that from the industrial commercial to the mixed employment. Just to get an idea where the site is, off Mill Street, if you go down Edison Way, you can see the site there, an existing building, existing parking. You can see through the parking area that we have large drive aisles and that kind of wrap around through easements and access through the site. A closer view, and this details more the amount of parking, required parking and stuff currently being used as a chapel use. Their intent with the proposal of this zoning, for their intent, you have to look at it at a zoning level, but their intent is to provide elementary opportunities, which are with their chapel and their church, and those are allowed within the ME, but they're not allowed in the IC. Running through this really quick. Currently, industrial, commercial, as you can see, surrounded on both sides. On the other side, three sides. On the other side, we have the mixed employment with the public facility. Looking to change that to the ME zoning, which is adjacent, directly adjacent to the east of the project. This is where I think this is unique, and this request brings it, as Nate said, closer into conformance with the master plan. So we're looking at our master plan. Our master plan is ME over that entire area. As we noted before, we have the IC and we have the ME. So IC is currently, if it exists, it conforms under ME, but you couldn't go in and request IC under ME. So some of the other things are an SPD, a PUD, PO, and so this ME zoning request is appropriate in that situation. Just going through the analysis that was done and working through staff, the appropriateness of that mixed employment and allowing those schools, religious, and institutions is what's driving this. Our compliance with our review actions and procedures, mitigating traffic impacts. Like I said, you can see that the parking is there. We have those large drive aisles associated and dealing with the traffic and any sort of impacts we'd see there. Provides a safe environment and rational phasing. It is built. They are, we'd anticipate adding that proposed use. Our findings, they are expanding that use to K through 6. There's 60 students with approximately 10 employees. That'll be from 7:30 to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday. Pickup and drop-off areas are located there, as I indicated through the site plan. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation, available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. We'll bring it back to the Commission for disclosures. Commissioner Villanueva.
No disclosures. Commissioner Villanueva, no disclosures.
Commissioner Draculich, no disclosures.
Commissioner Becerra read and reviewed the material.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer, same.
Commissioner Velto, same disclosures.
Commissioner Armstrong spoke with the applicant's representative, read and received emails, familiar with this site. We'll go ahead and move on to public comment. Have no requests to speak forms. Do we have anyone wishing to speak on Zoom?
No, we do not have anybody on Zoom. We did not receive any emails, voicemails, and no request to speak forms.
Anyone in the chambers wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the commission for questions of the applicant or staff. Commissioner Becerra?
I'm actually ready to make a motion if y'all are.
No issues there. Does anyone have a question or?
I think it's fantastic.
Okay.
But
move forward with
but I don't want to just jump ahead if Villanueva or anyone else has questions.
Go for it. If anyone has questions, now's the time. Otherwise, proceed with your motion, Commissioner.
All right, fantastic. In the matter of LDC 24-00063 Calvary Chapel zone change, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to recommend that the City Council approve the zoning map amendment.
Commissioner Draculich, I second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes unanimously. Good luck with your project. We'll now close public hearings and move to item 7, Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report. Commissioner Velto.
Yes, we had a Truckee Meadows Regional Planning meeting. Commissioner Armstrong is now the chair of that esteemed commission. So he's dual chairing for us. Yeah, that's all I had to report.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. We'll close item 7, move to item 8, staff announcements.
Yeah, I have actually a fairly exciting announcement tonight. At the last city council meeting, the council appointed a new commissioner, Christina Del Villar. I believe she's actually listening or watching on Zoom this evening. So she will be present with us at our next meeting on the 21st. So that's some exciting news. Also, at our next meeting, staff will be bringing forward a training. Angela and her team are working on that now, along with a new Planning Commission member handbook that will kind of replace the somewhat outdated, not outdated, but for lack of a better term, boring materials that we provide now with some kind of oversight of the roles and responsibilities of the Planning Commission. So
What's the date on the next meeting? Sorry.
I believe it's the 21st, 2 weeks from today. As far as actions taken by the council, at their last meeting, they upheld the Planning Commission's recommendation for approval of the Chisholm Mobile Home Park Master Plan Amendment and Zone Change. As I mentioned at our last meeting, the Ranch Hera Village 7 tentative map that this board approved was appealed. The council upheld the Planning Commission's recommendation with some added conditions related to fencing, retaining the on-site statue, and that sort, and preserving existing mature trees. But, so that project will move forward, and that's all I have.
Great, thank you, Mike. We will close item 8 and move to item 9, Commissioner suggestions for future agenda items. Do we have any suggestions? I saw Commissioner Becerra and then Commissioner Villanueva.
Sure. I think I was just going to ask Mike if, for that training, would it be possible to invite our city council member liaison to attend as well, so we can all get to know that person and figure out what that partnership is about?
We can certainly extend an invitation if you like.
Yeah. I just learned that we have one, so figured it wouldn't hurt.
Commissioner Villanueva.
So I think there's a company, a consultation company that the city hired to work with the city on improvements to the Truckee River, and I think they're working with a couple consultants, and I would just like presentations from some of them regarding kind of ideas that they're throwing around, suggestions for how they plan to move forward, and just any input that the city's received.
Sure. Let me reach out with Public Works and some of the other departments involved, and we can certainly get a presentation put together for you.
Any other suggestions? Commissioner Becerra?
Sure. Not a suggestion, but maybe a segue into public comment, because I'm not sure where it falls in. But really, it's just wanted to salute JD for his leadership this past year. So thank you, sir. And the staff and this fellow body, because I think I just completed like a year along with Rohrmeyer. So just want to say thanks all. And the attorneys. You all are great too.
Flies by. All right, well, thank you, Commissioner. We will close item 9 and open item 10, public comment. This item is for either public comment on any action item or for any general public comment. I have no requests to speak forms.
I did
Anyone
not
on
receive any
Zoom?
correspondence, no voicemails, and no one on Zoom.
Seeing no one in the chambers, I will close public comment and move to item 11, adjournment.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Second. All those in favor? Aye. So be.
You're stuck with us now, Harris.